Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. This is Apollo Detectives number 5. I am Ben Emlyn-Jones, and I'm joined yet again by some of the greatest Apollo detectives in the world. In fact, we're all in different places, which is just as well, because if we're all in the same place and a bomb went off, the Apollo hoax community would run around like headless chickens. I'm joined this evening by some great guys. Some of them, I think all of them you've seen before, and they're back again. But it's not going to be a repeat of the last show. We've got some new information to discuss. So I'm just going to briefly introduce everyone who's on this evening. So we are joined, first of all, by our esteemed producer, Neil Geddes-Ward. Hello, Neil.
Hello, Ben, and hello, everybody else. It's good to be back here.
Hello.
Hello, Marcus.
How are you, Neil? Are you well?
Hi, Jarrah, and hi, Andy, and hi, Ben. Yeah, I am fine, although we're in the middle of this lockdown for the coronavirus, being March the 31st, 2020. It's a recording time of this. We're actually all in lockdown. Even in Australia, Jarrah's on lockdown, and he's just described a lot of similar things of behaviour there that's apparent here in the UK, where we're having to queue for shopping or old elderly people going to the shops at a certain hour and things like that. So, yeah, we're all kind of in this one together, I'm afraid. But at least we've got something to do. We can't go out, but at least we can talk over the internet to everybody and discuss our research, which is ever ongoing.
Exactly, that's true. I mean, we're making the most of our free time, I think we'd say, definitely. So thanks very much, Neil. And we're also joined by another Apollo Detectives. I think he's Chief Inspector. I can call him that. It's Marcus Allen. Hello, Marcus. Welcome back to Apollo Detectives.
Thank you very much, Ben. Appreciate it. It's good to be here because there's so much going on with the Apollo stuff. I mean, anybody who follows the space excitement of NASA will know that they're all trying to do their very best to get back to the moon. Quote, return to the moon. And Elon Musk is launching his Skynet. He's just got a few things. In fact, I had a call today from somebody who's seen some of the satellites up there. You see about half a dozen of them following one after the other. Only at certain times when they catch the sun and you're in the shade of the earth, you can see them going across the sky.
Yeah, this is the new kind of way of doing satellites. It's a multi-pack satellite offer. You know, buy 2, get the other 10 free or something.
Yeah, there are, I think it's something like 300 he's launched so far. He's got to do 2,000 in all. It's supposed to be something to do with an internet access through space.
Yeah, now, that's what I've heard.
Well, whether it's internet access from space or down from space, I don't know. Maybe ET is gonna chime in at some point and say, "Hi guys, we're here too. Don't ignore us."
Hopefully, but I've seen some people are reporting UFO sightings, and I do wonder about that. Let's go now to the co-host of the Paranormal Peep Show and our fellow producer. It's Andy Chaplin. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Ben. How you doing?
All right. How are you? Are you all right?
So you're recovering from the lurgy.
I had the dreaded lurgy. Yeah, it's actually I suppose because I'm not in a high risk group and I wasn't that worried, but I was pretty rough actually. I was pretty rough, but it was only really bad for about 5 days. But I'm keeping out of people's way, you know, just in case. Like my dad, who's 72, I don't want him to get it, and people like that. But have you caught it yet?
No, I've been obviously kind of loads of time on my hands. So the problem I have, every time I kind of try and work out what is actually going on, I'm absolutely bombarded by various conflicting bits of information, which I'm sure we're going to get into. Huh. But one thing you said earlier, actually, kind of off air, you said that you were actually diagnosed over the phone.
Correct. Yeah.
That's ringing alarm bells for me, because when we got all these kind of like cases, inverted commas, of coronavirus, you're going to be a stat, Ben. So you're going to be added to the coronavirus cases. But you may not necessarily have coronavirus if you haven't been tested. You could have regular flu. You could have some kind of offshoot. I know they're saying kind of like the symptoms of coronavirus are different from regular flu. However, they keep updating what the symptoms are. Even in the last 10 minutes, I've had a little on my computer. I get news updates of what's going on, and they say, oh, actually, one of the very first symptoms that you can get is gastro. Tummy upsets, which I swear I had back in January, really, really badly, along with high fever as well. So I may well have got it. Maybe hundreds.
Hopefully
maybe
you got it out of the way. Hopefully you got it out of the way. It's nice to get out of the way early with mild symptoms.
Yeah.
So Last but not least, we have our early riser because he's actually in Sydney, Australia. It is our very own returning Apollo detectives. It's Jarrah White. Hello, Jarrah.
Nice to be here. And as you guys said before, we're all in lockdown here as well. It's getting really crazy now. You can't find any toilet paper in stores, and you have to look on eBay, and it tends to go up to about $10,000.
Oh my God!
Crazy.
Some people, I'm sure, will buy it. I mean, they will. It's become like. I mean, I saw it was actually not far from where you live in Australia. These women who were actually fighting over toilet paper in the supermarket. It was incredible, an incredible sight.
It's like viral. You can't make shit up like this. This sounds like it's like something that you'd see on the young ones or something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where they got the idea from.
Well, gentlemen, it's great you've joined us this evening on the Apollo Detectives for yet another episode, because a lot has happened since the last one. The previous one was about the 50th anniversary of the alleged Apollo missions, the first Apollo mission to land on the moon. And of course, that was an informational choke point that we took good advantage of. Marcus, I know you were on the Herpanlo show as well. It was really great.
Yep.
But since then, there's been a lot of updates, and in particular, something, Jarrah, I know you want to bring up, and this is a video that was actually made in the White House Oval Office. So what's that all about?
Well, basically, this had Trump invited Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin to the Oval Office, and also a few other officials from NASA. And they were basically, discussing, okay, this is the 50th anniversary. It's been all this time. Here's all the great thing that we've done, and now we've got to look to the future. And Trump and even Aldrin actually made some interesting comments that I guess kind of shocked me in a way, because it's pretty much almost hits the nail on the head. Essentially, what we've been trying to point out, like Trump, he actually said, I know there was a lot of delays and stuff that have been happening. And I thought, my God, that's an understatement. And then Aldrin, he actually brought up that he was very displeased with the progress of the new Artemis program. And he basically said, okay, in the 1960s, we had the Saturn V, we had this capsule. Basically, we could launch to the moon in like 3 years' time. Now we have a capsule. We can't even get the rocket registered. We've been trying to get all this, ready in time and stuff. Everything's been delayed. What went wrong? Basically, there's words which it's like a little wink to the hat, because he literally practically took the words out of our mouths. What we've been saying, like supposedly we went to the moon back in the 60s with this primitive technology. You think there would be cities and bases on the moon by now, but instead it's just gone completely backwards. And it literally, let me see, the Orion program, if I recall correctly, was announced in 2004. Bush Jr., he used it as a re-election campaign, and oh my God, that was nearly 20 years ago.
And of course, was it Obama who said? I think, was he the one who launched the Artemis program?
I think it was it was Constellation initially. That was what it was called. That was Bush's proposal. Then Obama came along. He essentially cancelled all the moon landing aspects of it. Initially, he said, we can't afford to treat the taxpayers' money like it's monopoly money anymore, so we got to cancel the program. He came under fire as a result of that, so he came up with a bit of a compromise for that. He says, okay, well, we've been there before. Buzz has already been there. Let's just skip the moon, head off onto Mars and asteroids. Now.
Yeah, it's like it's really weird because as Phil Cooch, the columnist at Nexus magazine, and Marcus will no doubt have a lot to say about that. But he makes this a good point that with 1960s technology, the Apollo mission was conceived of and succeeded within 8 years actually, well, less than that if you include Apollo 8. Yeah. And now we have 21st century technology, and they're saying, maybe sometime in the next 50 years we'll get back to the moon. And we have Russia and China sort of saying, come on, let's have another space race, guys. So this is an important point, and as I'm sure Marcus will tell us all about this, and we did discuss this on the last show, but it's worth repeating. Can't they just sort of like build a sort of new upgraded version of Saturn V. I mean, that's what they've done with Soyuz. They just simply took the original 1950s design and they kind of like made it better. They kept what was good about it and just added things that were just replaced things, elements of it that were obsolete. So, so it's, do you think, Jarrah, do you think that there's something up with Aldrin? I mean, I'm not saying that Buzz Aldrin is actually coming over to our side, but he has shown signs, I would say, of being a bit mentally slow, as you would expect a man of his. Unfortunately, a lot of people of his age suffer from mental problems, and he's said a couple of things that I think it's almost like he's forgetting the script, and he's deviating off it. I mean, what do you reckon?
Well, they're all getting older by the day. In fact, this in the video I sent you guys, we were talking about just now, they're both seen standing, you know, like while Trump is sitting at his desk, everyone else is just standing around him and stuff. I looked in the comments, people were going, "Mate, these blokes are nearly 90 years old. Let them sit down, for Christ's sake." You know, it seemed a bit of a hindsight there, but you could tell that they're I guess degrading every day, it seems, and well, you know, that happens. It's only so much time you can keep it together.
Perhaps that we won't be seeing Buzz Aldrin and Mike Collins on, well, certainly not Buzz Aldrin on TV again. But Marcus, you wanted to add something to this because you've got some impression that Trump knows more than he's saying.
Well, my impression is that when Trump announced the Artemis program, Artemis, by the way, in Greek mythology was Apollo's twin sister. So we're obviously going to land women on the moon. Well, I presume that's it. When Trump announced it, what was it, about 6 months ago? Big announcement. And in fact, it was basically Mike Pence, the vice president, who did the announcement. He did the official announcement. But my view is that Trump, for all the faults he may have, is very, very well informed. I would find it very difficult to believe that he wasn't aware of some of the questions which have been raised about Apollo. He's got his ear to the ground. He's got a lot of people around him who are fully conversant with some of the more outrageous stuff that's going on. Now, if Trump is aware that there are questions about the Apollo mission as described by NASA, you know, that famous agency, never a straight answer, if he's aware of some of these questions which have yet to be adequately answered, he can't come out and just say, "Oh, I don't think NASA know what they're doing. They're a complete load of idiots, and we put a few people in there. And, they got a new director there, Jim Bridenstine, who used to be a senator, so he's obviously controllable." If Trump is aware that there are question marks over Apollo, he's not going to come out and say, "I think it was a load of rubbish. I don't think it happened." What he's going to do is to give NASA a realistic target. Oh, go back to the moon. 2024 is the official figure. That happens to be the end of the, hopefully, Trump's second term, 2024. It all sounds very logical. It's very reasonable. If they can't do it, and this is 5 years from the announcement, 2019 was the announcement. If they can't do it in 5 years, Trump is likely to call them out. Trump doesn't stand for incompetence. He tends to call people out if they're not doing what they claim to be able to do. So if they can't do it, and NASA are already giving indications that they can't do it, they want another 4 years, 2028 they want to go to. This is going to be longer than it took Apollo from a standing start to allegedly getting onto the moon. So if they're supposed to be doing it again 50 years later, why is it taking longer than the first time? So Trump may start putting pressure on them, and he may start saying, "Oh, come on, guys, just dig out those old plans. You had a big rocket, Saturn V rocket. You had a lander back then. They haven't got a lander now. You've got the Orion craft, so that'll get you there. So what's the problem? Oh, we need more money. We've got to research it more. Well, didn't you research it the first time? Oh, we've got all this radiation problem. We've got to protect our astronauts. Well, you protected them the first time. What's the problem now? Just dig out the old plans and stick them in a capsule similar to it, and away you go." Now, if they don't achieve it, if they don't actually come up with the goods, i.e. allegedly land back on the moon by 2024, there are going to be more than Trump asking the questions. There are going to be a lot of other people saying, well, why was it so difficult now when it was so easy 50 years ago with the technology designed using slide rules, not computers even? What's the problem? And that may be when NASA starts to come up, because there's nobody working at NASA now who worked at NASA in the 1960s. They've all retired or died or moved on. So there's nobody there now. So they're all enthusiastic, young, go-getting computer geeks who will dig out the old plans and see what they did the first time. Let's update. Oh, where are those plans? Oh, we lost them.
Oh, another possibility, Marcus. They might dig up the plans and just think, hang on, this is impossible. This is going to kill them.
I think that's exactly what they're finding out, because the more stuff we can hear from NASA now, it appears that they are becoming fully aware that the first time it never really happened as described. And NASA are getting into a real problem with this. There was also another comment, I forget where it was. It was a comment I saw about 2 or 3 weeks ago, following the announcement about the new Space Force, the 6th part of the US military, the Space Force. And the comment, it was almost an offhand comment saying, well, of course, NASA will be folded into the US Space Force, and then you won't hear any more about it. So it's as if NASA have had a death sentence passed on to them by the US Space Force. Whether that's correct or not, I don't know, because the Space Force, we don't really know too much about what it's intended for, what it's going to be doing. But NASA don't appear to be involved in any of the planning for the new Space Force operations. So it appears that NASA have run themselves into a dead end, a cul-de-sac, and can't find a way out. And they're desperately trying to raise money, and they're not getting enough, which is why they want more delays. They haven't got the staff who can actually do the work. They haven't got the contractors who can do the work, because they don't know what they're doing either. The whole thing is so tied up with anomalies and inconsistencies and unexplained details. It's Apollo 2.0.
Yeah, this is interesting. I didn't know that about NASA, about how NASA was possibly going to be absorbed into the Space Force, because NASA is meant to be an independent civilian agency, although, of course, it does work closely with both the Department of Defense and the intelligence services. I remember from the early space shuttle missions, they were like saying, oh, well, there's classified elements to this mission we can't report on, which obviously meant they were launching a spy satellite or something.
Well, there were Department of Defense missions where they were launching spy satellites and the like. In fact, some of those payloads are still classified. The Air Force actually wanted to put a lot of money into the shuttle because they wanted to use it to launch various weapons or surveillance programs and the like. Of course, they were proposing to launch from Vandenberg.
Yeah.
And of course, after the Challenger disaster, it was turned out, okay, that was a big waste of money, because they had some of the coldest weathers down in Vandenberg, and that's not good for the O-rings.
Yeah. That's right. The cause of what's allegedly caused the Challenger disaster. But Andy and Marcus, you both brought up this point. That basically it's as if Trump can't say it openly, but he's trying to paint NASA into a corner.
Yeah.
Which they can't get out without just admitting it. And then maybe this could be a symbol, as a start of a change of the culture may be necessary to do this. Andy, what do you think, that we are approaching a point where the things we're talking about could be discussed openly? Andy, you need to unmute.
Unmute.
Andy, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Andy, his microphone is still muted. But Marcus, what do you reckon to that? Do you think that's likely?
I think
we're going to get this open discussion soon.
I think.
Sorry, I'm back online.
It's all right. Sorry, Marcus.
No, that's all right.
You want to go first, or Andy?
Andy, you was bringing up this idea that we could have a position where we could have like an open public discussion over what is today considered, what we're talking about when we're considered a fringe conspiracy theory. Do you think that's likely in the near future?
Absolutely. Take a look at what's going around at the moment. Going back to your cough and coronavirus, Ben, this has been planned for a long, long time, Agenda 21. And you think we hear this word key workers, you know, so we think of key workers like NHS, police, firefighters. Would you say a 5G worker is a key worker? Because apparently there's a ton of 5G towers going up everywhere. So I think what's going to happen, in answer to your question, Ben, I think the tinfoil hat people, i.e. us lot, we're going to be proven right. I don't want us to be proven right. I wish we were proven wrong, but I think time after time, it's a case of ticking the boxes, tick, 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 tick. And it's only a matter of time before they get down to the moon landings. And as Marcus rightly said, if Trump knows or suspects that we didn't go and is calling their bluff, and they say, actually, we can't make it in 5 years, I think that's going to be another tick in the box, really.
So I agree with you. I think you see the disclosure of secrets in space, including the moon landings, as part of a general culture of openness and perhaps a lack of suppression that we've used to have, which I think would be wonderful because, well, on a personal level, I expect you guys understand how I feel here. It'd be a wonderful personal vindication because they've been laughing at us and they've been calling us names. They've said terrible things about us. We know some characters who've been incredibly rude to people like us, and they're going to have to eat the biggest slice of humble pie the world has ever seen, aren't they? It's going to be quite something.
Would you guys also kind of have like a bit of a sinking heart feeling as well? Because at the moment, because it's you know, in mainstream news or mainstream areas, it hasn't been proved that we haven't gone. You know, if they come out and say, actually, well, yes, we never did go, there might be like a little sinking part of us where maybe we just had a little glimmer of hope that, you know, maybe we're wrong, or maybe it would be nice if we were wrong. But then if it was absolutely fully confirmed, then we'd be looking at the moon and thinking, well, actually, no, we never did go, and it's confirmed. And, you know, the whole thing's a big sham, which, you know, we kind of suspect anyway. But what do you think? Is there a tiny wee glimpse of hope that maybe we went with any of you guys?
Oh, can I answer that first?
Yeah, okay.
Because I've thought a lot about this. I think I'd be quite frightening. It would be frightening for, even though I've sort of like integrated these ideas already, it would be a frightening moment for me because I think I'd be worried about how other people might react to this. Not least because, as Marcus said this long ago on this program with John Ronson, if the moon landings are wrong, what else is? And it's a domino that's going to start, and it'll lead to, I think, it's a process we have to go through, but it's going to be a difficult transition for humanity. It really is. It's not going to be all sweet. It's not going to be all sweetness and light. We're going to go through a torturous few years. Does anyone else want? Mark, Neil, you haven't said anything yet. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll just say before I say that, I just sort of had an email from Trevor Weaver, who has been trying to get on with us. So he hasn't forgotten. So I've just said we tried to get hold of him, but his light wasn't showing. So I've just been messaging back and forth, hence me taking a step out from the recording for a second. So hopefully we'll be able to bring him up later on. I just wanted him to resend me a Skype ID in case for some reason he's updated it, or his settings were set to unavailable or something like that. So hopefully we'll bring him in at some point. Now, what was the question? I forgot what it was.
Well, what do you think would happen? Like, for example, if there was an open discussion about the moon landings and it became common knowledge, as in the Interstellar movie, that we simply didn't go, how would that make you feel? I mean, on a personal level, how you relate to other people?
Well,
Well, bearing in mind that you sort of accepted it, at least it's something you've accepted already. Sort of.
Well, I would just say, well, loads of us have known about it for years, but you lot laughed at us or something like that. That's how I think, And whilst people are watching this, they're still laughing at the Apollo hoax theory people like ourselves. But when I show you some of the stuff that I've been looking into recently, and also I've got some film clips to show you as well, I can't think, why do these people still cling to the idea that we went? I mean, I was telling you about the rocks picture that I've got from Apollo 17 I forget the crater now.
I'm glad you brought this up. We should let viewers know that this is breaking news. This is completely new research. And if it's true, well, Neil, take it away. What's this all about?
Well, who wants to share their screen first? Because I don't want to jump the gun. I'm quite happy to come in later on. Has anyone got a presentation they want to offer first before me? I mean, I can go first if you like.
I have something to share on screen, but
yeah,
I'd just like to answer the question first. Yeah, the question was, what would be the census, I guess, public reception of the moon missions being revealed as a fake. I think in some ways would be the start of a new beginning, because once the dangers of space radiation and all that are out in the open, people can start to look, okay, let's concentrate on how we can actually get there for real. You know, we've got all these companies, you know, that are popping up out of the woodwork, like SpaceX and Blue Origin and the like and stuff, which are proposing to build these gigantic rockets. And I feel, you know, these guys, these are billionaires. You know, these guys don't have any. Obviously, they receive contracts by NASA to launch their satellites and stuff, but they have their own ideas to follow, their own agenda, I guess, if you could put it that way. And I feel with or without the government's help, they're going to try to get to the moon for real. I feel there may be some learning the hard way. There may be some realization. Okay, we've got to shield this thing differently to how we're proposing of shielding it. Like Elon Musk, he often kept saying, "Oh, we need to. It's okay. We'll just keep the column of water, pointed to the sun, and that'll shield you from the radiation." That's how cavalier he was about the dangers of space. And in fact, I actually sent him several emails, rather Twitter messages. I sent him messages in his Twitter account, basically saying, "Hey, you need to have all sides of it shielded, because you've got the solar flares on directional. You've got the flares, scattered throughout the entire solar system because of the magnetic field lines." And he was at a press conference shortly after that. So one of the things I learned recently was that they come out from the side. These particles, they carry along the magnetic field lines. So you've got to shield it on all sides of the capsule. Basically, those words. So there's still some hope in that regard. With Space Force, I guess let's say there's some mixed opinions about that in my case, because well, first of all, on one hand, a military moon program might actually be more worthwhile than the NASA one, because the NASA they say, oh, we need more money, we need more this, we need that. But well, here's the thing: NASA, we all generally think of NASA as having like all the money in the world, but in fact they actually make about $20 billion per year, whereas the United States military, they make up to about $600 billion per year. Like you put that into perspective, the Apollo program cost about $20 billion between 1961 and 1975, when they had the Apollo-Soyuz test mission. And well, you think about that their annual budget alone could easily pay for 3 Apollo programs in the 1 year. So you think of what if they had that kind of budget, what would they pull off to try to solve these problems? On the other hand, when it comes to the Space Force, I feel they've just slapped a new title on an already existing program. You had the U.S. Air Force Space Command, and I see what Trump is trying to propose with this. He's trying to propose some manned military space program. They actually hinted at that in various speeches that they've gave. The problem with that is that this is a bit of an idea that's, I guess, 60 years too late, because you had, I think about it this way, back before they even had men in space, there were ideas for what was called the Dinosaur, which was essentially this space plane. It was intended to drop nuclear bombs on enemy targets from space. And then they also had what was called the Manned Orbiting Laboratory, which was essentially a Gemini capsule, attached to this elongated pressurized trunk, essentially, basically, which they would use to spy on enemy nations or even inspect satellites, enemy satellites. That was the idea. Well, all of these proposals, they wanted to use the Titan rockets, which were these hypergolic fueled rockets. The idea with that is you would have these seated in a silo somewhere, ready to launch at a moment's notice. And all that war broke out, bombs away, fire off, lift off. But today we're mostly reliant on liquid rockets and solid rockets, and well, we don't have any modern day equivalents to, except maybe the Proton rocket, which is a Russian thing, of course. We don't have any modern day equivalents to the Titan rockets. So building an equivalent would be at least for the 5-10 years of development. And so, in some ways, in many ways, actually, it's a pipe dream what he's proposing. It's an idea that was, I guess, 60 years too late, as I say.
Yeah. There's some interesting developments going on there. But in fact, it's interesting what you say about the launching of the rockets, because if it's so easy to do it, as Saturn V apparently demonstrated, and they can't rebuild the Saturn V, because the next most powerful rocket was the space shuttle, which was less powerful than the Saturn V. It took 10 years to develop it. Why didn't they just stick the shuttle on top of the Saturn V rocket? They had some spare ones lying around. Nixon cancelled the program because it couldn't lift it. It couldn't do what was proposed. Now, the space shuttle only weighed 25 tons. Had quite a bit of fuel to go with it as well, if there was a few satellites on it. That's half what was launched on the Saturn V. Something does not add up here. If you start looking at it realistically and look at the figures, the Saturn V rocket could not do what was claimed for it. Because if it could do what was claimed for it, the space shuttle rocket wasn't required. It was a complete anomaly. Because the space shuttle rocket...
You brought up the... Go ahead, sorry, I thought you finished.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, if the space shuttle rocket was so good, why is the Space Launch System now, which is being developed, using the Space Shuttle main engine plus 2 solid fuel booster rockets, which don't provide as much power as the Saturn V did? So they're going backwards. Now, this is like launching the Boeing 747 in 1971 and not being able to build another one since. This is not the way technology works. The first solo flight across the Atlantic was by Charles Lindbergh in 1927. It's like saying, well, nobody's ever flown the Atlantic since. Of course they have. Thousands of people every day do it.
Well, much better planes too.
Yeah. I mean, not right now, obviously, because they can't do it. But, but that's a completely different story. It's the technology.
Coronavirus is being a real issue. In fact, it already talks about postponing the, quote, return to the moon by 2024 as a result of the coronavirus. There's many space programs, many space missions that have been postponed or cancelled as a result of this.
Yeah. Very convenient, isn't it? But
it seems that using it, obviously that's using it as an excuse, probably, but then they'll think of other excuses as well. Maybe Brexit will be blamed. Goodness knows. I mean, they'll come up with something, but it won't last forever, will it, Marcus?
Brexit won't be blamed. Megxit will be blamed.
Oh, Meghan, yes, I'm sure it's her fault. We'd be on the moon if it hadn't been for her. Yeah.
She's just left Canada. Didn't even say goodbye. They're all pissed off about that. She's turned up in LA. What's going to happen now?
I would like to share the screen for just a second and stuff. I'm glad you brought up the space shuttle markets, because this actually segues into one of the things I wanted to talk about.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, this is a Wired article.
Here we go. Got it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now, basically, this was called the International Lunar Resources Exploration Concept. Okay, as this was basically a part of the original Bush's plan to return. And this was opting for what was called a lunar surface rendezvous, in which basically the craft doesn't have enough fuel to get back to the Earth, so you have to refuel on the moon. So this is literally a moon or bust option. But what I find interesting about this is this was going to be using one of the proposals. Here's actually a photograph of it, or rather an artist's rendition of it, I should say, on the lunar surface. They have like an Apollo-style capsule here, which is connected to all these tanks and engines and stuff. And they were considering many different launch vehicles, including the Soviet Buran was one of the options. But the one that stands out, if this comes back up, this is a bit slow.
It looks very Arthur C. Clarke. All this stuff. I mean, it looks like quite.
It's Walt Disney at his very best.
This is one of the launch vehicles that was considered was the Shuttle C. Essentially, you got the same booster rockets, you got the same external tank, and only instead of the orbiter, basically you take off the orbiter and you put on this cargo mount, which basically has the shuttle's main engines, and inside is the actual payload. Now, this here is the actual spacecraft, and down here is the trans stage, which is supposed to carry them to the moon. And this was proposed back in the 90s when it was George Bush Sr.'s idea of returning to the moon. There was another idea which was called Lunar Early Access, which was I'll just squeeze pictures and let me just enlarge this one.
Oh, that's the lander, is it?
Yeah, this is a more straightforward idea. They have the same space shuttle as always, only this time they have an Apollo-style capsule. These landing leg things here. That's launched from the space shuttle's cargo bay. But the actual trans stage will be launched by a separate rocket. They're proposing either an Ariane 5 or a Titan. They still had the Titan rockets back in those days. And the idea was that these two would dock. And here's the thing: this one wouldn't actually enter lunar orbit. It would literally be fired straight at the moon and has to make a hard landing, I should say, by firing its engines before it would essentially crash into the lunar surface. So this is another literal moon or bust option. This is seriously what they were proposing back in those days. But what's important to note is that these both proposed using shuttle technology. Like this one is obvious. This was proposing to put the Apollo-style capsule with the descent stage into Earth orbit. It would dock with some other vehicle, launched by another spacecraft. This one proposes, taking off the orbit, but still using the boosters and the engines, but it has essentially an unmanned cargo variant of it.
It's interesting here. I mentioned Arthur C. Clarke as a kind of joke earlier on, but if you look at some of his early science fiction, he makes a point that seems to be not lost on the people who make these designs that Jarrah's just shown us, which is multiple launch missions would be necessary. Now, Arthur C. Clarke actually wrote a story about this. It was serialized in a newspaper in the early 1950s, long before Sputnik, where it describes a mission to the moon, a joint mission by several different nations, Britain, the United States, Soviet Union, which involved basically an orbital assembly of craft, and then basically so there'd be multiple launches to get the craft built in low Earth orbit, which would then travel to the moon and land. Now, of course, Apollo wasn't like that. Apollos were all single launch missions. Everything was just bunged on the top of one rocket, the big Saturn V that Mark has described. That was sent to the moon. It came back. It was a very simple plan compared to those which Jarrah's just described and what Arthur C. Clarke described long, long ago, before anyone allegedly went into space. So that's very interesting. Now, I want to move on now to another subject. Now, this is breaking news. This is our exclusive for this particular Apollo Detectives. Now, I know that there's been a lot of study of the Apollo visual record, the television shots and the films. And Marcus has done a part of this. Jarrah's done an entire series on this. Yeah. Of course, for that, Mary Bennett and David Percy did this. Bart has done it. Bart's not here today, unfortunately. Bart Zabrell. But it's always worth going through these things again, because sometimes people spot new things. And someone has spotted something interesting new about the Apollo visual records. It's none other than our esteemed producer, Neil Geddes-Ward. So, Neil, what have you discovered?
Well, hopefully, just to update you, Ben, I've sent you Trevor's new Skype ID. So at some point, maybe after my presentation, you can bring him in. I've tried to click it into the search people box, but it's not responding. So I thought, well, maybe you could do that. I'll send that to you over Messenger. But yeah, I'll see if I can share my screen. Now I've got to think where it is. Share screen. So let's see if I can get something up.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it. Now, I didn't discover this. This is not breaking news, this particular bit, but I just thought I'd show this. This is from Apollo 15. I did see this about a year ago on someone's recording, and I tracked it down. But yeah, it's in the Apollo 15 record. And I wonder if actually somewhere I might have the actual... it's not on that one. Yeah, this is obviously... There's a footprint there, a load of footprints. There's the astronaut footprints there. You can see with a large tread. But just where it's circled, you can see what appears to be the tread of someone else, another shoe. Someone thinks it's possibly a tennis shoe or something like that, which would have been probably quite easy to wear or common to wear at those times in the 70s. Any thoughts on that before I proceed?
it's like the tread is different. It's like diagonally across the sole. Now, if you look at the astronauts' boots, there's like it's almost like they're a 90-degree angle to the direction of the foot. So it's a completely different tread pattern. Could it be identified with any particular make of shoe?
Well, this is what I was wondering. If anyone knows what that tread pattern is, I'm just trying to think of the popular makes of, pumps or sneakers or whatever. Adidas comes to mind.
Maybe it's just
I'll probably think of a counter argument that someone might make. So it's obviously the lower one is like a fresher one, and it's on top of what looks like the sneaker one. Somebody might argue that it looks like somebody's stepped there, but then maybe like twisted to the side slightly, and then kind of like did another little step.
Yeah, possible.
So imagine you're taking a step, and then kind of like you're twisting to the side, maybe to grab a piece of a tool or something, or to look a different direction. But then you kind of stagger a little bit and you take a little mini step.
But if you look at the actual outline, if I just move my mouse, this outline here, Now, if you're going to twist your feet, say if this is the feet you're talking about, and they're going to twist, you would get a more of a distorted pattern rather than that. Also, those lines there, they're quite solid, but much thinner than these thick lines here of the tread here, you see?
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. They seem to be curved as well.
Exactly, there's a curve. So it starts off and then comes into a bit of a, especially at this point here, a bit of an S-bend joint there. So I would probably say, size 9 or 10 shoe or something, maybe like that. But also on the Apollo shoes here, you've got the very wide flat part here, which is evident on these sections there. But here, it just seems to be a very, very thin section. So,
I've just actually just searched for some, shoe tread. I put in shoe sole treads, and there are numerous makes of shoe that have patterns very like that. Sure, it can be purchased today. I mean, obviously this was quite a number of years ago, more than 50 years ago, but it seems to be quite a common type of tread pattern, and you obviously don't see that with the Apollo boot covers. Yeah.
So anyway, so that's that one. Now, let's see what else I've got in this little goodie bag. No, that's...
Before you go into the next thing, I would like to make a suggestion and stuff like that. There's actually a shop that sells replica Apollo spacesuits. It's called Space Toys. I'm just looking at it right now. They actually have replicas of the Apollo suit boots and stuff. They sell them for, oh my God, $225. But I guess you get what you pay for and stuff. That might be something to get a hold of.
That'd be cool. Now, where this picture came from, you can actually see a wider version of it here, I hope. So this was on this website address, flickr.com. That's right. I was checking.
How to be trendy.
Yeah. So it's on Flickr, and it does say, I think, here's the photo itself. Let me get my glasses to this. Yeah. It's AS-15, so that's Apollo Spaceship 15 or AS-15 dash. Apollo 15.
For Apollo Saturn.
Apollo Saturn then. AS-15-86-11671 from the mission of 1971. Now, interestingly, it has a whole description there of the mission, but it doesn't talk about that footprint. But I've seen a couple of versions of this. One where they've completely removed that section in Photoshop, and the shadows were different and stuff like that. And it's still called the same number, which was interesting. So it looks like someone's tried to mask that particular mistake, because a lot of people, researchers are aware of this particular pattern on the internet, it seems. Now, so this is what I've been looking at, and I've been looking over at this area here. So this is called Camelot Crater. So right. I'll zoom in, and then what I'll do, I shall make it easier just by plussing my screen, because I know roughly where these things are. Okay. This is from Apollo 17. Now, what I discovered, because I thought, well, I'll start with all these rocks, because I know from Scott Henson's experience, he's found loads of weird stuff amongst all these things. So I thought, there's a whole nice load of rocks. I'm going to have a look in there. And this is only discovered this last night, literally last night. But what I want to draw your attention to is these two particular rocks here. If I just pull this across. Look at these two rocks. What's the odds of these two rocks being exactly the same? I call these pigs in space.
They look like pigs, don't they?
Yeah. Because look, a little stone there, a little stone there. That's a little shape just like a little piggy. And here's another little piggy. The third one went to market or to the moon. And they've got the same kind of shape here. They've even got little ears, as I call them, and little snouts. I know that people saying, "Oh, it's pareidolia. They're not really pigs." I know that, but these rocks. What's the odds of those two rocks looking pretty much exactly the same, 98% the same?
They've even got the little stones.
I think that might just be the same rock. You know, you've got these panoramas are composites. You know, they're different pictures stuck together.
Do you think that's what it is?
It might be that it is a replica.
That's a possibility. Although
not exactly the same, though. I mean, if you look at the shadow, the shadow effects are slightly different for the two rocks. Now, so if it's a composite, that they probably be, I don't know, would they be exactly the same? Would they have the same sort of like processing for both prints for the composite? I don't know, but I want to make a point here about when the skeptics say pareidolia, and they love the. By the way, by skeptics I mean skeptics in the kind of like metaphorical sense of the skeptic movement. Not just the scientific skepticism itself. They will say that it's pareidolia is a natural part of human cognition when it comes to that. There's an audio version was apophenia and pareidolia is visual. It's where you see random shapes and you think that you are picking out an organized form within them. So, for example, you look at a cloud and you think, "Oh, that looks a bit like my grandmother's face." And things like that, or you listen to a noise and you think you're hearing words. John Phillips, who does the electronic voice phenomenon, he's often come across this. The problem with the pareidolia argument, which the skeptics do, is the same with when they call coincidence on everything. Is that when you ask them, well, where's the statistical ceiling above which you'll stop saying that? Where's the cutoff? Because if there is no cutoff point, it can be applied to anything. It's a get out of jail free card that can apply to anything. For example, they could say that that the amazing mural in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican City, that's a random splash of paint. You know, Michelangelo didn't actually paint that. He just got angry one day and kicked some paint pots around, and he liked the pattern that emerged.
Yeah.
And you can't, unless the skeptics declare the statistical ceiling, you can't prove them wrong. I made this point when I was that they can't be proven wrong. You can't prove that's actually a painting. I made this point to Dr. Paul Rogers, actually. I used the example of winning the National Lottery 5 weeks in a row. So I'd ask any NASA supporters who are poised with that on their tip of their tongue to shout at Neil to think of that before you actually do so.
If it's proven it's just the way they stitch it together, then fair enough. I understand that. But what also interested me here, if we just pan slightly to the right, is that got this really odd shaped rock, which is almost like a curve and then an overhang. But what again interested me was these weird effects that appear to be light. You see that there? If I move this into the middle.
Yeah.
Now, that's like shadows, and then you've got these two white things here. But what is interesting is that you got this little black mark going across there, and then a little black mark going across there. It's almost as if that you could spin that around over like a small pivotal rod or something, whatever it could be. I don't know what it is. But then you got these little similar kind of overshadow hanging rocks here. But I'm just a bit, what is that? That could be where they segmented it together. Again, if that is the case, then fair enough.
I'd like to see the original. I was just going to say, I would like to see the original photographs of this thing was derived from. Yeah,
on that website, you can pick up each individual picture, and it might be the case that you might find all sorts of stuff there. Now, I've got to come back out of this a little bit.
Implications here, if it turns out this is actually something genuinely suspicious, is that basically props were reused for different Apollo, basically, or they were copied. Props were like duplicate props were used, and they were put into the same scene.
Okay, here we go again. Going for another zoom here. Sorry to interrupt, Ben.
It's all right. No, it's your presentation.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to come into this part here. Now, I'm just looking, again, people might say, oh, the astronaut dropped that or whatever like that. And if he did drop it, then they obviously brought an extra lot of things to the moon. So I'm just looking at things like, for instance, that looks like a wristwatch to me, that thing there. See, a little central part there, and an overhanging strap there and something there. It looks like a wristwatch. I'm not saying it is, but it just looks like a wristwatch. Okay?
Mm.
Don't know. It may not be. May not be.
The astronauts do claim they took an Omega watch with them on all the moon trips and stuff, but I don't recall anything about them, claiming to lose one.
Yes, exactly.
If it was, I'm sure Omega would have put it into one of their adverts by now.
Actually,
Yes.
Neil, on that picture, could you go back a little bit where you got the astronaut in the picture?
Sure. I'll zoom out a little bit.
It's supposed to be Harrison Smith.
Oh yeah, and the other part I was looking at, I'll just zoom in on this part here, and then I'll go to Harrison Smith.
Okay.
The point I wanted to show everybody was what looks like to me, and again, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it reminded me of a horseshoe. That thing there. There's something like a disc here with an inner disc, and I'll zoom in on that again. So that, and then you got this weird thing here.
Right. Unfortunately, I can't. If the resolution's not good enough, as Jarrah said, we need to see the original print.
Yeah, some of these things are better when you actually look back at them from a distance. But I also want to show you something else on the far left. I'll go to the astronaut.
Okay.
There he is.
Right. There's Jack Smith walking away from the camera. Now, if you look at his backpack, or look at where the sun is in relation to him, the sun is more or less straight ahead of him.
Yeah, so it should be.
And you can see a lot of detail in his backpack. Presumably, if you enlarge it, you can get more detail. But if you look at the rocks on the ground, just behind him, the shadows on the rocks are black.
Yeah.
Completely black. You can't see
You
it.
beat me to it. I was going to comment on that.
This is another example of the filling in light that Marcus, you talked about previously, with the shot of Aldrin coming down the Lem ladder.
That's right. Yeah.
It's very similar, this, isn't it?
It
you can
is.
actually see the stars and stripes. You can see it looks like there's little pockets on the back.
Yeah. You can see a lot of detail in the shadow of his backpack. Now, if he's being illuminated by this magical reflective property of the lunar surface, which is what the Apollo supporters always say it is, of course it reflects the light. Well, of course it does. You can see the damn thing from 250,000 miles away. It'll reflect light, but is it enough light to be reflected from that backpack and to be picked up on the film that was used to make this picture? It's photographic film, don't forget. It was not digital. It's been digitized to put it online. But the original image was on a photographic film.
Yeah, I remember, Jarrah, you did an experiment, didn't you, with a cardboard box and a model?
Yeah, that's correct. What I was doing is that the cardboard box was painted black on the inside, and I had cut a hole in the back so I could stick the camera through. And the reason for the box was to, I was using the sun as my light source, and obviously there's a problem trying to do it in the daytime, or at least on Earth anyways, is because obviously the Earth has an atmosphere, and because the light is being scattered through all these air molecules, the blue sky itself will act as a secondary light source. It helps to shield the subject from any secondary light offered by the blue sky. And what I found is that in order to get the in order to get the subject lit up like that, I had to open the aperture up really wide to the point that the landscape was just a wash over exposed light. Like what you're looking at here right now, you can see that the astronaut is directly exposed, the ground is directly exposed, you only have one or the other, I found in my experiments. In order to get the landscape perfectly exposed, I had to close the aperture to the point that the subject was pitch black.
Yeah.
There's another thing I would like to comment as well on this particular picture. I remember one of our opponents. His sites no longer exist. Bob Braining. He was arguing, oh well, this his legs are sort of darker than the rest of the things. He was claiming, oh well, the rocks are low to the ground. That's why they're not getting enough reflected light. We got those big boulders from earlier on. Was it Tracy's rock? It was that one's much higher. That's even taller than the asphalt. You can still see it. It's pitch black. Obviously, it's not shown in here and stuff. But looking at this picture in this really real close up, I can still see that the darkness on his leg is looks more like dirt from the ground, Because
dust. That's what I thought could be.
Yeah. Neil,
okay.
Neil,
a second.
Neil, if you can lower the picture a bit so you can get the rocks in the picture at the same time as the astronaut.
Yeah. So if I just pull out a little bit.
Yeah, so we can see the shadows on the rocks. Now, they're quite close to the ground. So if this magical reflective property has any validity at all, you'd expect to be able to see more detail in that dark side of the rock than you would in the astronaut, who's a much higher up. So just straight logical thinking, this picture makes no sense at all. Because if the explanation is that the property of the lunar surface is such that it will reflect light to shadow area as it is on the backpack of the astronaut, why isn't it putting it into the detail of the rock much lower to the ground? That is what is so ridiculous as the explanation. It's interesting to say that Bob Branning's website has been taken down. I think he's been exposed for making so many errors in his calculation that he had to get it down. I mean, it's like one big monkey. He keeps coming up with these explanations, which when they're examined in any detail from a strictly technical point of view, make no sense at all. So
he made a whole article responding to me and my previous video on the radiation, and he also added his own website, his own article about calculating how much radiation the astronauts would have received. But when looking through his article, I found that it was mostly based on downplaying the amount of radiation they would have received. He was using outdated sources to determine, okay, this will, like one of the things he was saying was that any radiation that's higher than 100 mega electron volts will pass clean through the astronaut. Well, that's simply wrong. The radiation that they use in proton therapy, it's accelerated to something like 200 to even maybe 250 mega electron volts, and that's within the same energy range as what we get in the Van Allen radiation belts. Then he was also claiming that only radiation that's higher than 100 mega electron volts will get through the spacecraft. Again, that's not true. You look up NASA's own data from the 60s. In 1963, there was this paper by G.W. Pellerito. In fact, I actually got their book right here as well. In fact, this was published in this Astronautical Engineering and Science, and they actually had a chart, showing the attenuation of the thing. I'm not sure. Obviously, you're still sharing the screen there and stuff. When you come. But basically, their chart showed that the shielding equivalent to that on Apollo would have only attenuated up to 8 mega electron volts of energy of protons.
Well, actually, maybe he did literally remove his website because he realised he'd made so many mistakes and he was a liability. It's, I mean, we can see what Marcus and Jarrah proved here is the photographs. I mean, Marcus, you mentioned this whole situation, and Jarrah, your experiment was to try and recreate the image using the methods that we're told the Apollo astronauts used, which was like a single camera and the only light source being the sun and reflected light from the environment. What we see here
one thing I forgot to mention, I should say as well, for that experiment, I was doing it on an asphalt road because the asphalt has the same reflectiveness as the lunar surface. A lot of people look at the sky, look to the moon when it's full, they seem to think, oh, it looks very bright, but the only reason it looks bright is because it's literally the closest and the largest light source, in space at the time. You know, all the stars, they're like light years away. The planets, even though a lot of them are much more reflective than the moon, they're so far away that they just look like stars. You know, that's the reason why the moon looks so bright. But in actuality, it's very dull as far as reflective surfaces.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if the moon was as bright as it needed to be, I mean, this takes us back to the NVIDIA thing, then it would be too bright to look at. I mean, literally, nighttime with a moonlit night would be almost as bright as daytime, and the Earth, and we wouldn't. But what we see here is something which could only be created with multiple light sources, very carefully controlled, as David Percy and Mary Bennett says in their book. You need multiple light sources. So
much
you had
surface.
fill in light with proper reflectors and things like that to get the effect you're looking at. This is a studio created image, and Marcus and Jarrah, I think, approved that.
Yeah.
Also,
and that astronaut, in my view, is not a real person. It's a mannequin on a miniature set. Because if you just try to do a panoramic shot with a camera, it's actually possible to do it using a viewfinder, because you can see where you're overlapping from one section of the picture to the other. That's how you do a panorama. You have to overlap it so that you've got enough bit to coordinate with the previous picture. Now, if you try to do that without a viewfinder, logically, it would be very, very difficult, or certainly a great deal more difficult, unless you've practiced a great deal. But the point is, you still need a viewfinder to see what it is you're trying to match up. Now, these panoramas, some of them go through 180 degrees, some of them actually go through 360 degrees. To take a panorama of that size would take about 10 pictures, and there appears to be no error in the individual photographs. So when you match them up, they all come out okay. I don't think that is technically possible. I've tried it. I've taken panoramas. It's possible to do it with a viewfinder, and you know what you're doing. But without a viewfinder, and in a spacesuit, wearing heavy-duty gardening gloves, in the temperature they've got there, we haven't even talked about the vacuum problems that are on the moon, which maybe if there's time we just cover it a bit. But one other point I'll say on this is that the book Full Moon by Andrew Chaplin, it's a very good book indeed. It's a sort of coffee table type book, and it carries a lot of Apollo photographs. We're told that Andrew Chaplin was allowed to take duplicates of the original film that was stored at the Johnson Space Center under controlled conditions. Very few people have even seen those films. Anyway, the point is he created this book, and one of the pictures in there, I think it was from Apollo 17, I'd have to check it again, has exactly what Neil is pointing out. Duplicate parts of the picture appear as if it was the original image. And you can see there, because there are little groups of rocks in certain configurations which have just been duplicated in the picture to make the picture look better. It's so ridiculous. Now, I was filmed pointing this out by Chris Everard for his space series of films.
The Secret Space, yeah.
Secret Space. I was filmed doing that over 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's quite possible to find these. So what Neil has found is in something this is on Flickr, I think.
Yes. No, this is the IPSUSRA. No, IPI.
Yeah, that's
Lunar Planetary Institute.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
That's the same website I use, because it's just easier to use it than some of the other ones. So
you actually use that to find the image number and stuff. You can just scan your eye. Okay, this is the picture I'm looking for, and let me see if I can find it on the Apollo archive or whatever. You know?
These pictures on this website are supposed to be originals. Now, if you're finding these, pigs in space, I think it's very amusing. They do look exactly like pigs in space. All right, it's possible to explain it initially as being a duplicate from a panoramic photograph where the two sides are overlapped. But that doesn't stand up to scrutiny, because you would get other parts of the picture above it and below the pig the same on both sides.
They have the same lighting effects too.
Yeah, so those pigs I think, are original to the photograph. So either it's somebody having a bit of a laugh, maybe it's the set dresser think, I wonder if they'll spot the pig in the picture.
That's like what Bennett and Percy were talking about, the whistleblowers, weren't they? Because some people...
The clues.
Yeah, they believe that they did this on purpose, which, well, maybe that's possible. That's,
Okay, let me just show you some more things then.
Okay.
Quickly.
I would just like to comment on one thing that Marcus had said stuff, though. Just like to add my own 2 cents to what you said. You mentioned the difficulty of trying to make a panorama without a viewfinder. I think David Percy actually had a point about that. They showed that despite all their training in the actual telecast from Apollo 11, they needed assistance from Houston to say, okay, the camera's pointing this way. You're going too fast from the panorama. Slow it down. Basically, calling them out on what they were doing, supposedly what they were doing wrong when they were filming these, setting up the camera.
That's right.
The panorama, the video.
Yeah.
Neil?
Yes.
So I was
I'm
going to
here.
say can I apologise to you? I just need to, because
Sure.
to explain. You mentioned you think the astronaut's a mannequin. It's just it's like not a real person. Why do you think that?
They're relatively small in terms of, it's very hard to get any sense of scale on these pictures. We assume it's an astronaut because that's what astronauts are supposed to look like, and the caption from NASA says this is Harrison Smith or Jack Smith, photographed by Gene Cernan. So we take it for granted that that's what it is. It's only when you start examining it and asking questions about it. Now, in terms of mannequins used in photographs, some people are now looking at many of the images, the still images, and they appear to be taken from different angles at different positions. In fact, they're not. If you isolate the astronaut in, I think it's 3 individual pictures, I think it was from Apollo 15, they're identical. The backgrounds are different, but the astronaut is in an identical position. The illumination is identical.
Oh.
Now,
So it hasn't moved. It's just it's the same posture. It's exactly the same posture. So it hasn't moved.
Like if they're doing, these mannequins may be about, I don't know, 12, 15 inches high. They don't have to be particularly big. Because we can't get a scale on, an easy scale, we assume that they're life-size, 6-foot-high astronauts. They don't necessarily have to be that. They can be miniatures. Hollywood, God bless them, are very good at creating special effects. And around this time, this is the 60s, they would be using film to do the special effects. Not CGI, not blue screen, hadn't been invented then. Front screen projection, back screen projection, that was all there, but miniatures were certainly being used. It had been used since the days of King Kong in 1927, the original King Kong.
Right.
So if these are miniatures, it makes a lot of sense that we can't get the scale and we start to see duplicates. Now, one thing, that the picture you got on screen there, it's got 2 crosshairs in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I see them.
All right. The one on the left looks larger than the one on the right. So the inference being that the one on the left is the center of the crosshairs. It's always the biggest. So 25 crosshairs on every picture. And the center one was always the largest. But the one on the right, though it's smaller, is in the wrong position relative to this central one, assuming that's what it is. It's as if the photograph has been cropped. Now, it may well have been cropped, but I can't see any evidence of the cropping.
Yeah.
You have to look at the original pictures this was derived from, I think. Here's a panorama shot.
Yeah, it's a panorama shot, so presumably it's several images stitched together. You would expect to see some, all right, even if computer software nowadays is so sophisticated, you can remove any form of join in the picture. It would be interesting to get the original pictures and see what it was that was cropped out, because those pictures appear to be very accurately created from the originals, because there are originals of all these pictures.
Yeah, and it's the shaking got hold of them. Yeah, and so thanks for that, Marcus. That's an interesting idea, and I've not heard it before. Neil, now you're not finished yet. You've got a little bit more.
I'll just show you. If we go actually to this smaller crosshair here and go down, you'll see these weird box-like constructions. I don't know if they're wheels or something But look, they've got very sort of square angles to them, and then bits at the end.
Yeah.
That's just one thing. But the main focus I want to come down to is this rock here that looks like it's got some sort of metal pipes. I mean, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 pipes, maybe joined here and perhaps here with brackets of some sort, going all along the length of this rock. And if I just zoom out, you'll kind of see where it is in the lay of the land. And then what I'll do, I'll pan across this rock here. Now, this is interesting as well. If I come back up here, and I'm going to zoom in again, Control plus, Control plus, Control plus, Control plus, which is the same rock. Now, with me a second. Yeah, this object here, that appears to me to be a threaded by screw nut type of thing. Do you see that there going into that rock?
That's very odd. I mean, it does. I can see it's like almost like a tap handle.
Yeah,
that's very weird. I mean, to me, you know what that looks like to me. Obviously, it's just the subjective impression. It looks like a papier-mâché model that's got wet, and some of the covering has come off, and you can see a bit maybe framework underneath it. Sometimes it's chicken wire, but it looks like there's something more substantial at the base. Yeah. and the nuts, I mean, it's like. Yeah, it looks like a screw in.
Something else there, possibly. Don't know. But this was intriguing. This section here, because it blurs out the rock underneath it, and there appears to be a line. And to me, it looked like acetate or glass or something there that shouldn't be there. Can you see that?
Yeah. Either that, or it's they tried to cover something up, and when they were editing the photos, they had to cover something up that was a bit too revealing, and they didn't spot the other things.
It was E.T.'s lunchbox. He forgot it.
So that's you can see all that. Look, the structure of these pipes go all the way through, and again, there seems to be something down here, bracket of something, and it reminded me a little bit what Scott Henderson had been pointing out, where bits of cars and all sorts of things you can find in these areas. So that's why.
Go back to those lines for a second. They actually just that actually kind of reminds me of stuff. I'm a geologist, and I've seen rocks having sort of lines like that, but it's usually sedimentary rocks and stuff. This is supposed to be igneous rock, which is that kind of stuff there is odd for that reason.
Yeah. So as a geologist, it looks like pipes, doesn't it?
Well, the line structure, as I was saying, you can get line structures in sediments, in sedimentary rock, as I was saying. But igneous rock, that's interesting there, because usually igneous rock is just the solidification of magma. There's no change or any sedimentation or anything like that.
So sedimentary rocks are they're created by, is it sand or something that solidifies layers of sand?
Yeah, that would be a form of sedimentation, yes.
But the moon, there's never been any sort of water, so there's never been any sand. Supposedly it's completely dry. There's no water to create sand.
Well, you got atmosphere there, so you got no weathering conditions. You got no oxidation. You got no. It's geologically dead as well, so you got no recycling of the surface or anything like that. And yet, of course, we have the ferric iron and large amounts of water in there, which that there is a giveaway.
Unless if someone's going to say that's another meteor from Earth, aren't they? They'll say that's a sedimentary rock. I mean, they've done that one before. We just talked about it in the last program, and they're going to try and pull that card again.
Okay. Now, whether this is a rock, I need to this is from Apollo 11, and we've had pigs in space, we've had rodents on Mars, and this is my version of the dead rat on Apollo 11. Okay. So here, again, I only saw this recently, last night. That looks like an ear, a snout, maybe the leg, another leg, possibly a tail of a rat here, and a leg here. Now, I've got here, there it is there. I've coloured it in, so it helps viewers maybe I've done the tail slightly wrong here, but I've got the body, so that would be the back of the rat laying down, its ear, its snout, maybe the legs, maybe some back legs, and maybe the tail. And if someone says, no, it's just a weird rock, and we've proved it, then fair enough, I accept that. But I just thought it jumped out at me when I was looking at it.
It reminds me of that
I was just going to say the shadow in the background kind of jumps out at me as well. It kind of looks like a hadrosaur.
It looks like a dragon with or a dinosaur. Yeah. Do you know, like the Mars, like the Mars thing that Neil was referring to? That's there's a program by Rich Planet TV where Richard interviews this guy who's been researching stuff, and he's seen what looks like a lemming on Mars.
Yes.
And maybe like if that's the idea is this was done on a remote island off the coast of Canada. And also, that's where the Spirit and Opportunity rovers were.
Devon Island, I think.
Yeah, it's a huge island. It's about the size of England, and it's completely uninhabited, very cold. And they just use that as an outdoor studio. I mean, I'm not saying this is an outdoor studio, but you know, rats get everywhere, don't they? I mean,
yeah.
So that is what it is. You can't. Unfortunately, it's too indistinct to tell. But
yeah,
it's a possibility.
Now this looks like a nail. Bit of a head there and maybe a pin part. Go again, Apollo 11. I'm not saying it is a nail. I'm just saying it looks like a nail. And I've got descriptions up here saying nail in dirt, only because it's a way of labeling it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, and that mask to the left. That's a weird shape for a rock that's supposed to be on the moon.
This one, yeah. There's a lot of this Pink Floydy kind of Standing Stone stuff. I've noticed.
That's probably where they got it. That's where they got the idea from. They did Far Side of the Moon or Dark Side of the Moon, and they thought, oh, we could do a lot of moon stuff. Yeah,
it looks like something from Easter Island.
That's it. That looks like a nut or a bolt to me, possibly. That's got a circle there and another circle in there. This thing here. Now, people could say, oh, well, this is bits they dropped off the lunar module or something. But this is interesting. This piece here, it looks like a little, almost like a ring. With a shadow there, but half ring buried in the dirt. I don't know. Washer, maybe. I don't know.
It's something similar happened on the Phoenix mission. There was that Phoenix Mars mission. There was one photograph showing the footpad. There was like a little screw or bolt, whatever, that fallen from the capsule. And in the very next shot, it's not there anymore. This is long before the actual hand started moving around the place.
Ah. Yeah. Now, this was interesting. This looks like a little stand. We're going up to like a little backing section. And maybe it reminded me of a miniature fan, but I called it radar dish in my file. But again, this is from Apollo 11. I don't know what the size of it is, but I had to zoom in. But it looks like a stand and perhaps a radar dish. Again, it could be this paradollar effect. I'm quite prepared to accept it could be that. But I just thought I'd put that one in there as items of interest. Another item over here that looks white and large, maybe with a box-like structure there. Don't know what it is. Rectangle rocks, bit strange. What we got here? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Rubber inner tube, I called this. Again, it's not really a rubber inner tube, I'm sure. But this was a weird thing here. This section here. It looks like a kind of rubber material. And it looks like a deflated tube. But again, I don't know whether this section here is joined to it. But of course, it's zoomed in. Don't know what it is.
There's some very weird shadows there.
Very weird shadows, yeah.
I get this feeling.
Little gravestone thing there, perhaps. Maybe another can of Labatt Spear, square rock or something.
Probably the grave of, maybe it's the grave of the cosmonaut who went there first.
Oh, yeah. This appeared a nice little cluster of starfish rocks all together. A bit weird, that one from Apollo 11.
It's not one of those crinoids, is it, that Richard spotted?
Yeah. Now, this is interesting. This is quite interesting. This could be another can, perhaps. But this thing over here, if I zoom in, this thing looked like to me, and I don't know what you'd call them, but if I just pull that in and I'll... I
see a label on the can. I remember Una Ronald in the...
Oh, yeah, a Coke bottle.
Film. She saw a Coke bottle, and she was in Western Australia, and she saw a Coke bottle. Maybe... they were using cans as well. You can see a damn label on it. Sorry.
Yeah, but this looks like something like a kind of a pendant or something. That looks like a photograph of someone in one of those oval pendant pictures. Do you know what I mean? Like a family heirloom type thing.
Yeah.
Again, it may not be that, but that's what it reminded me of.
It's very weird. A very weird shadow. That.
Yeah. And then I called these little items... because that's what it reminded me of. They look like the front of Thomas the Tank Engine. That one there and that one there. It's got eyes and nose. And then this was a weird thing here. That looks like a segmented kind of shell or something.
I was thinking a donut or like a cake, like one of those Eccles, not Eccles cakes. What
I think we're getting back into pareidolia now again when they're talking about Thomas the Tank Engine and stuff.
Fair enough, mate.
So that's probably what people will say in response to this.
But it's a point. I mean, some of the things that Neil has spotted, I think, are just obviously some. I think are more likely to be just random than others. But it's clear that if there were set dressers here, it's possible they made mistakes. If this is like an indoor studio or is a created one using like the standard studio methods, that is creating like just laying sand and dust and then put in like papier-mâché models. Obviously, they made some duplicate ones by mistake. Honestly, if I'd been doing this, I'd have probably used an outdoor set and used some natural landscape like they did with Mars. Possibly like on Devon Island or someone else that's very remote and where people aren't going to come along and disturb you and see what you're doing. Or maybe somewhere Area 51. But there are some really suspicious things here. Definitely, you've discovered some suspicious things, Neil.
Yeah, there's some, again, these little stones here all going in a sort of a line fashion across there, then coming down here and not quite making a thing, but it's just really weird. All these little stones.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see by the shadows there, just forming a line and then coming down here. Now, this one here was of interest in this particular group because if I zoom in, bring it down a little bit, again, it looks like a half-buried washer or ring because you can see the shadow of this thing there, you see. Again, I don't know what it is, but
a thing that an interesting comparison on these, because these are allegedly taken on Apollo 11.
Yeah.
When Tom Hanks did his mini-series From the Earth to the Moon, they did a particular sequence, a particular segment on Apollo 11 specifically. Now, we know that he used studios to create it. He bought in loads of moon material from the company that supplies it. Compare the pictures of those sets with these ones, specifically the way that the shadows are created, to see just how near Tom Hanks got it. And I don't think he got it particularly close. He was doing an impression of what Apollo 11 would look like. But to compare the two, because this is supposedly taken on the lunar surface, where you've got billion-year material that is supposedly undisturbed except for meteorite impact and solar wind and dust. Where's all the dust on these rocks that are supposed to be there for several million, if not billion years, that settled down on them? Because quite a lot of these rocks have no dust on the top of them at all.
Yeah.
It's, I think
I heard that. I was just going to add. I heard that they for the shooting of the scenes in that film, in that TV show, they actually used powdered. I think it was powdered granite they used for the lunar surface. But of course, that's it's much more reflective than the actual lunar surface. So they're able to, get fill lighting from the surface itself without using fill lights, which was convenient for them, I guess. But that kind of is telling. When they did that more recent film, First Man, I believe they shot it in some quarry somewhere. But I don't remember. I don't know what they were mining over there. But the material was obviously much less reflective. And if you look at the shots in that film, Armstrong is like pitch black. Yeah. Armstrong was really pitch black whenever they were walking around on the surface. It's like they were trying to go for realism with no regard if it conflicted with the source material.
Yeah, it's true. It's always interesting. I mean, I've been interviewed by many people, and a couple recently were two people who were trying to take me down. It's called Blue Earth thing. And they were trying to make out that I was wrong with the conclusions I reached. Now, one of the people involved had attended film school. That's what he said at the beginning of the show. He said, I've been to film school, so I understand film. Of course, the use of the word film was perhaps a little incorrect there. It should have been digital. Because when I asked him if he could explain to me what an optical printer was, he didn't know what an optical printer was, let alone what it could do. So if somebody's been to film school, you'd think that they would have some idea about optical printers. But no, you didn't know what it was. So we've got people who are now looking at it. I mean, I've been researching this for as long as he's been alive, so that may be a slight disadvantage for him. But he spent a lot of his time trying to debunk flat earthers. And I checked his website before I was on, and I said, look, when I come on, I want you to make it perfectly clear to your audience that I have nothing to do with flat earth, nothing whatsoever.
I knew this would happen.
Yeah, I think you and I got bit by the same bug, because there was this one bloke, I think his name is Taboo Conspiracy. He actually solicited an interview from me under false pretenses. Obviously, when I found out what he represented, I denied him permission to use the interview. He was posting my comments, telling all sorts of things like, "Oh, airplanes should be pointing their noses down to follow the curve." Anyways, he had an interview with you as well. I think I sent you the link to that. I'm guessing he got you under false pretenses as well.
Marcus, what about flat moon?
I'm waiting for them to do something like that.
See, I know, Jarrah, you've done two entire videos on this, but we knew this was bound to happen. That the NASA supporters are using the flat Earth phenomenon to kind of like try and attach. They're using the overlap between ourselves and the flat Earth people to smear people on our side. They're using it. They're exploiting it. This is why I had that idiot Martin Kenny on this morning, rather than Marcus or Mary Bennett or Andrew Johnson or someone like that. Do you remember that debate, supposedly? And Martin Kenny, the flathead, he was on there. So this, unfortunately, is something we have to deal with. And Jarrah, you've done a couple of great videos about this. This is something we're going to have to deal with. They're going to exploit this. And it looks like that's what they've been doing to you, Jarrah, and you, Marcus.
Well, that's why I made a specific point of ensuring that they said it, not me saying it. It was them who said it. And they, to be fair, they did it okay. They said, we want to make quite clear that Marcus has nothing to do with flat Earth. Because it's been introduced. I don't know where it's come from, but I think we can be reasonably certain of one thing, that a lot of people connected with NASA listen to our videos, look at what is being discussed, try to work out whether what we're saying is correct or not. Because one of the things that Scott has discovered, which he may well be able to enlarge on next week, is that NASA are altering a lot of their records online as we speak. Well, not necessarily as we speak, but very recently.
They do in the Chaikin book, because I got a copy of that. My brother bought it, I think, to take the mickey out of me when I used to speak to him about these sort of things.
Right.
But they made a big deal about the panorama at the Taurus Littrow Valley, which means NASA are essentially retconning the entire Apollo missions to try and fit it in with what we're saying. What they don't realize is they're saying these things now, which they didn't say at the time. It's like the thing you said about the radiation, Jarrah, when you had contacted Elon Musk. It's all stuff they've come out with since we've been talking. These are not contemporary things, which they should be contemporary, because they should be essential design features of the missions.
Yes, they should.
Yeah, in fact, I remember, Marcus, you were actually on this one documentary where they were supposed to try to, debunk everything. And it was the Zigzag production show of 2004. Yeah. They had Jim Oberg on that same program saying, the idea was to point the bulky end of the ship towards the incoming front of radiation. Now, that was Jim Oberg saying this crap. And when I heard, Elon Musk basically saying the exact same thing, word for word almost, I think, God, he must have seen that same stupid program. That literally what was going through my mind when I saw that. I would also like to. I was just going to say I would like to make a comment as well about this whole flat Earth nonsense. I noticed when I see another trend that's been happening that seems to be coinciding with this. When I first got involved in the moon landing hoax movement, YouTube was brand new, and in fact, when it first came out, I think there was only literally just three videos about the Apollo missions. There was like two videos about the lunar lander training vehicle, and there was one video which was obviously just the clip, that's one small step for man and stuff. This is literally brand new stuff. When I first started posting Moon Hoax videos, I noticed there was a lot of my opponents that would come after me, come crashing in like a ton of bricks. But in recent years, they seem to have pretty much left us alone. The only Apollo hoax debunking videos they see in recent years now are videos that are responding to flat earthers. And these people who are making these anti-flat Earth videos, they're really good. They do a fabulous job of debunking this flat Earth crap. Explaining how you can prove that the Earth is spherical, how you can demonstrate it to yourself. But whenever they want to talk about moon hoax stuff, they only go after flat earthers who are claiming this stuff. And let's be frank, the so-called evidence that the flat earthers come up with to try to suggest that the moon missions were fake is just laughable. In fact, if I'm astonished that anyone would even this stuff finds its way into all sorts of places, and I keep getting sent emails asking, "Hey, what's your thought on this? What's your thought on that?" And I look at the thing and I realize, hey, this is crap. What are you talking about?
It's everywhere, isn't it? At the moment, it's like very popular. It's a shame. It's a great shame that this has taken off the way it is, and of course, our enemies, our opponents, they're going to jump on it because it's a very useful straw man. It's something they can then like tarnish. They can tar us all with the same brush, and that's a great pity. And I don't know. I can't see really how we can get out of it, except the methods you guys have used, which is like to very, very vociferously explain how we don't believe the Earth's flat. This is something entirely separate from us. These people might adopt some of our ideas, like Martin Kenny did on that TV show. They may repeat some of the ideas that we have, but in no way are we associated with their theory of the universe, which is completely false.
I had to make an entire boycott, basically, because we had the incident with the Italian, Albino Gallipini, who was running the so-called Bill Casing tribute website. It started off as a site where we all sent in tribute videos, rather tribute articles and stuff like that to his site. Where we could post on there. Wendy Casing in particular, she sent him. Wendy Casing was Casing's daughter. She sent the Italian a whole bunch of personal papers that her father had, photos and everything. Basically, create this thing. He establishes this internet shrine essentially to Casing, and then what's he do? Shits on his legacy by alleging, he basically claimed that no rocket can travel fast enough to get into but they can't travel faster than 5 kilometers per second, which is what he was claiming that Casing said. But if you actually look at his references, the 5 kilometers per second actually refers to the exhaust velocity. That's the velocity of the rocket that's shooting out the exhaust that's shooting out the back of the engine. That's got nothing to do with how fast the rocket goes. You use the Chilkovsky equation to try to figure that out, and you actually use the exhaust velocity. What's the formula? It's exhaust velocity times the natural log of the initial mass of the rocket over the final mass of the rocket. And you use that to try to find out how fast the rocket can travel. This guy was just putting words in Casing's mouth, Wendy and myself and even David Person, we all tried to, explain why this guy is was talking out of his ass and misrepresenting, Casing's legacy. He's doing more harm than good, and he just refuses to listen to reason. And despite all this, he continues. Even after I did that public boycott video, I put out 3 videos essentially explaining how he betrayed the legacy of betrayed, I should say, the legacy of Bill Casing. Essentially stabbed us all in the back. He continues to act as though he's a trusted ally.
Neil, Neil, can I say something which you might want to edit out? I just want to. It won't take a moment.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask Jarrah, maybe Marcus too. Is this more than just him being an idiot who went flat? I mean, what I mean by that is, has someone got hold of him and said, Albino, look, here's 50 grand, just say this stuff for us? Someone from the intelligence agencies, I mean.
I don't had a coach to me, when he was, I only met him once when they had this quote conference in Italy. Literally, it was out in the fucking nowhere and stuff, and there's only like a few handful of people that actually showed up. Most of them were just his relatives, and basically it was he seemed to be a bit unhinged. He was going off on a few other things, like the Illuminati, hidden messages about the Illuminati in the Apollo photographs and the imagery and whatnot. But he was obviously still from the conversations we had, he obviously claimed space travel was possible. He actually said that the pictures of the moon, taken by the command module, he said that he reckoned they were taken by, as he put it, automatic probe, like LRO.
I mean, if I was, for example, if I was a devil's advocate here, and understood that the secret of the Apollo missions was in danger, I think this is what I would do. I'd go up probably to one of us, and I'd say, "Look, how much money do you want?" Using whatever method the spies use and secret agents use, I would just try and get one of us on side, and to spout stuff that would discredit the whole idea.
He's either a traitor or he was a spy from the beginning, one or the other. That's literally no critical thinker would promote this nonsense. Anyone who can read past a kindergarten level should be able to see the flaws. See the error of their reasoning. Like one of the things that they like, they can't even do the proper math. You ask them how much curvature are you expecting to see. They tell you, "Oh, I shouldn't see this object because of 8 inches per mile squared." 8 inches per mile squared. That's a parabola. What distance is a parabola going to curve back on a circle? You give them the correct formula that you should be using to try to find out how much curvature you should see, and they just ignore it, or they just try to talk out of their ass or talk their way around it and stuff. I actually had this one bloke who, when I posted these boycott videos on my Facebook page, there was one bloke, posting in the comments, and he was claiming, "Oh, the Earth spins 1,000 miles per hour. It should be flipped off the feet," all this sort of stuff. I kept asking him repeatedly a simple yes or no question. Okay, you say you should. What your evidence that the Earth isn't moving is underneath your feet. Okay, when you're on board a plane, an aeroplane at cruising altitudes, right? It flies 500 miles per hour. Do you feel it moving 500 miles per hour beneath your feet when there is no turbulence? Yes or no? He just dragged on for nearly 300 comments. He just dodged it like a motherfucker.
It's like this thing. I mean, obviously, it's a bit of a cliche that we think, "Oh, he's a shill, she's a shill, everyone's a shill." I mean, I've been accused of being this, that, and the other. People do this without any evidence, but we shouldn't underestimate the keepers of the secret, their resourcefulness and their determination. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, we're going to carry on now.
Hang on a second, Marcus. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
It was a question I was going to ask, because you've obviously looked into this in considerable detail. Do you have any idea when this subject was first introduced in recent times? I'm not talking about
the Marcus. It was the publication of Eric Dubé's books. Now, this was in 2014. I know because I had a debate with a flat earther once.
That was shortly after I actually met up with Albino Gallopini in Italy. Wendy and I went there in, I think it was 2012, and a couple of years later, he just went off the deep end. He just jumped ship to this flat Earth nonsense.
Right. If we assume then that at some point, say 2014, 2015, somewhere around there, somebody somewhere made the decision that the introduction of the flat Earth debate, connecting it to the Apollo hoax debate, would show both sides up for being complete nincompoops and tinfoil hat wearing idiots. Somebody made a decision there. Now, why people promote the flat Earth, there are various explanations, and one of them I think is what I call now the Epstein method, whereby this is Jeffrey Epstein, late of Manhattan penal prison, who was suicided. His method of business was blackmail. He would fly prominent people in his plane to his secret island called Orgy Island, where he would be amassing large numbers of underage girls for them to do what they wanted with. What they didn't know was they were being filmed.
Exactly.
Everything they did was filmed. That film was then be kept well away from them, and they would be told that they'd been filmed, and it would cost them £1 million, $1 million a year for that film never to see the light of day. It's a very simple business method, because nobody can yet explain where Epstein's wealth comes from other than Robert Maxwell.
It is blackmail. He had a blackmail industry. Marcus, I suspect there may be some people within our community who start coming out and saying these things, who may be in a similar situation. I mean, it's very important to us that we don't, if we're in relationships, we don't get into these positions. Or if someone comes up to us who looks a little bit young, then we should have nothing to do with them in those terms. It's because any of us could be trapped like this.
Yeah. So the idea that this subject got introduced into the Apollo hoax debate is very suspect. I don't know how it happened, but I suspect there may be a few individuals around. Now, if you introduce a subject like flat Earth, yes, there are going to be a lot of people who will be quite enthusiastic about it and will want to continue to talk about it and will can prove it. You know, they can say, well, you can see, you know, you shine a laser or whatever it is that they do to prove it. There are going to be people who will be encouraged to go along with it as an idea for discussion.
Yeah,
somebody has then conflated the two subjects, flat Earth and moon hoax, into one, so that it is less available. But the point about that is that it is now becoming evident that NASA are fully aware of everything we're saying and all the points we're making. So if you're listening, NASA, pay attention. You may learn something.
You know, it's a very crude form of disinformation, and it's very, very transparent, I think.
Yes.
Now, Neil has a few more things he wants to say. So, Neil, you want to continue your presentation a bit?
Yeah. Can you see this picture here?
Yeah, got that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, again, this is from Apollo 17. And I called it pipe sticking out from a rock just because that's what it looks like. But you got this, again, it's zoomed in from that large rock area that we saw earlier in the panoramic. So this doesn't appear to be stitched together. It looks like a long pipe of some sort. Now, there's a sort of segment here with a part here that seems to connect this pipe. But also what's interesting is this thing here.
That looks like an axle or something.
Well, yeah, some metal.
Or
and there's a
a dumbbell. It's like weights, lifting weights.
Maybe.
That reminds me of the genie in the bottle. I dream of genie or something.
And also, there's this thing here. Now that looks like a cover of something because there's a shadow there. It almost looks like a wheel arch. I'm not saying it's a car, but then there's a part of it that's overhanging this segment here. So bits of scrap metal, something like that, maybe. Don't know what it is, but this certainly. It looks very suspicious. I mean, you know, is it a snake? Don't think so. But, you know, this metal thing here, very weird.
Like Scott has observed, it's car parts on a dump that have been sprayed with mud.
Yes.
Make them look like rocks.
Yeah.
Well, go to the top right, that kind of, where the black sky, that area there. They look kind of quite uniform to me.
What is that?
That could be footprints being illuminated by the sun.
It's sort of sticking up, though. Sort of sticking out up above the ground.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
There's more of them here to see.
And note how black the shadows are. Every shadow is black. No detail.
Yeah, what's what we're seeing. Like, obviously, if these are what they appear to be, Neil, then this is probably not accidental. I mean, no one is going to accidentally set up a studio to film a secret movie on a dump.
Here's a rock, but is that the letter F and the letter A? I mean, it was actually laying down horizontal. I've turned it around vertical because it looked like letters. So I thought, oh, that looks like letters to me. So
it's F and O.
It could be, but that looks like an F.
Yeah.
Don't know.
It's, somebody, maybe it's the whistleblowers, you know, expressing their anger.
Yeah.
But it's, again, I mean, the whistleblowing thing that Bennett and Percy talk about, this is likely to be just that.
Set dressers with a sense of humour.
Yeah,
even sense of humour or desire to leave some kind of message that maybe when everyone's calmed down and got the party's over, they'll look at it and think, hang on a minute, something wrong with this.
Yeah.
What's this black curved edge here? Then it marries up to this curve here that goes around, look, like an S there, and it comes back down here. Then it sort of marries up to that bit again. More pipe work or something.
Cable, like a cable, a wire.
Yeah, like a cable. This is a weird thing. It's sort of circular thing that goes down like that. It almost looks like a big squid. Not sure what that is. But some this was interesting. This thing here, look at that straight edge of that rock there, and then comes along horizontal there, and then it might have some sort of pipe that comes out of it. That could be like a jerry can on its side, but it's been covered with the spray-on mud, as Marcus calls it.
Yeah.
It's got that
Look
curve.
how black it is
Jerry.
too.
Okay.
But surely if these rocks have been on the lunar surface for several billion years, you wouldn't expect them to be straight still. They'd be pounded by micrometeorites, but
It's
they'd be all
very
rounded.
You know, I saw a video. It wasn't a Apollo hoax video. It's just like a normal astronomer's video. I can't remember which one it was, but he was talking about the dust on the lunar surface and about how it accumulates. Because obviously there's no precipitation, there's no wind, but the dust does actually like rise into the up and come down again. Through
I was actually going to talk about that at one stage in this interview. What happens is the dust it becomes electrically charged by things like the plasmas, by the magnetic field, and that sort of stuff. And what happens is, because light particles repel, the dust actually levitates off the surface, like I think it's a few kilometers into the sky. And when it loses that charge, it comes falling back down again. That in its own right is rather telling, because they have they say they got pictures from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that supposedly shows the foot tracks, the footprint trails, and the rover tracks leading away from the lemon, all that sort of stuff. Well, how can we get those? How can those tracks still be there with all the dust rising and settling back down to the surface?
Yeah, I'll try if I can find the video where it talks about this. I'll let you know, but it just makes this very point, and
it's called Photoshop.
Oh yeah, I mean the LRO photos. I mean you yourself, Jarrah, made the point about that as well, and about I think we discussed the flag and everything still being there when it shouldn't be, and things like that. But in previous shows, so, Neil, is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I could show you some video, but I think I'll leave that for another time because that'll take maybe 10 minutes and it might stretch out. So if anybody else wants to present stuff, I'll go ahead.
Well, I found that video that we were talking about earlier, the video with Trump. He's talking with Aldrin and Collins. Let me just see if I can screen share this. Screen share. Start sharing.
When Jarrah's done, there's one final thing I'll share as well.
I'm trying to full screen. Okay, here we go.
Administration,
here we go.
But the president has also taken action to streamline regulations for private space exploration.
Trump.
I mean, what the president's vision is that we will continue to have American leadership in space. Some of that will
he's
NASA,
fallen on his feet there, hasn't he?
as a part of our national defense, but much of it will come by unleashing the entrepreneurial energy of American space entrepreneurs, and all of it represents what I know all of these families are excited about is renewed American leadership in human space exploration. And it all comes to articulating and putting into practice your vision, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mike. And Buzz, maybe say a few words. You've been watching the space program very closely. You've been watching what we're doing. And what a career you've had, one of the great careers. What would you say?
Frankly, I've been a little disappointed in the last 10, 15 years. We were able to achieve so much early. Right. Maybe because of conflicts in Southeast Asia, we had to terminate the Apollo program and moved on in other directions. Right. But in the last 50 years, we had a rocket, Saturn V, right. And it took a command module, that was Mike's spacecraft, and the lunar module was Neil's and Mike's. But we all went together. Right. Then we got into the lander, we landed, and we joined up. That was my expertise. We came back. Now we have a #1 rocket right now in the U.S., and we have a #1 spacecraft. And they cannot get into lunar orbit with significant maneuvering capability. And that's a great disappointment to me.
How do you feel about that, Jim?
We're working on it, as a matter of fact. So the Orion crew capsule is an amazing crew capsule, and we need it to go to the moon within 5 years, which of course is the direction that we're on right now. But when we're there, I think the Gateway, it's going to attach to a small module in orbit around the moon called the Gateway. Think of it as a small space station. Right. And that's going to give us what we call Delta V. That's that maneuvering capability to go down to low lunar orbit and then back up on a lander. And so those are the pieces of the architecture that we're working on.
Well, I'd like to have you also listen to the other side, because some people would like to do it a different way.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you'll listen to Buzz and some of the other people, because they also feel, I mean, I know this has been going on for a little while, and we're so advanced, but I would like to hear the other side also, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to maybe say something on behalf of your family, please. Great family.
Yes, sir. I think the other real benefit of space, that is something we haven't talked about now, is the inspiration that it provides for all the kids out there, not just in the U.S., but all around the world.
Well, he's almost, he almost like, I don't think it was a confession, but he was almost like he was thinking in his mind, and there's a part of him that remembers what obviously happened, and it almost like came to the front, because it's a weird kind of, it's almost, I thought he was going to blow, I mean, obviously they'd talk their way around it if he had, but he said, oh, we didn't. He said, how did we get there? And he said, we didn't, or something like that. And you could see his mental problems when he was talking to this young girl.
And they tend to have trouble trying to get their words right. I've noticed. In fact, my screen seems to be frozen. I'm not sure what the problem is. Let me just try to.
I think the words, Ben, were, well, because we didn't go. We didn't go.
Yeah, he said something like that, and I thought to myself.
Then he tries to cover himself up with talking about money or problems like that. Here's the thing, though. You know, you look at stuff like the International Space Station and the shuttle program altogether and stuff. The ISF program cost, last I checked, was something like $145 billion in today's currency, and the shuttle was another $140 billion. You know, that's like paying for like 1.5 Apollo programs, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically the same in today's money as it was costing Apollo back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. $25 billion in the 60s, equivalent to about $150 billion today.
Yeah, the Apollo, yeah.
It's costing about the same, and they haven't even got out of Earth orbit yet.
Yeah, Buzz Aldrin born 20th of January 1930. He's 90 years old.
Wow.
Which means he's... I mean, I don't think he's going to be around much longer. And I expect...
let's see. John Glenn, he was 95 and
amazing what radiation does for you, isn't it?
I was going to say it keeps them sprightly.
Yeah. They've gone through a lot of radiation. It certainly has affected his life expectancy.
It's almost this. I will say this. I've actually been kept this to myself for the longest time and stuff. But the way it looks as though they're waiting. You know, even as early as a few weeks ago when Al Warden died. I noticed people who believed him were going around saying, "Will any of these people, live long enough to see another mission to the moon, another landing, or even another orbit?" And this is my own theory, but I think it's 100% accurate. I think what they're doing is they're waiting for until the last of these people die off, to basically come clean about this if they have to, because obviously this was if they are planning on coming out of the closet about this anytime soon, they're going to wait until the last of them has died off, so they can no longer be held accountable for being involved in this conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing would happen if they came out now was that Aldrin and the others, the surviving ones, Collins and all the others, they will get knocks on the door from journalists and things like that, and they say they want to, come on, tell us it's not true, Buzz. Come on, tell us it's not true. I mean, I've got a feeling that they are good. I think these guys obviously are not going to live forever, but I think in their twilight years they will be kept out of the limelight a lot more. Especially if they start rambling the way poor old Buzz does,
Let's be realistic here and stuff. The projected date they're proposing is 2024, and they're talking about 2028. The youngest one still alive is pushing 85. It was Duke, I believe, who's the youngest one still alive, and he's nearly 85 now. Right. Realistically speaking, in fact, the only complete mission that are still around is Apollo 8. Like all three astronauts from that are still alive. The others have at least one still surviving. The only one from Apollo 15 still alive is Scott. The only one from Apollo 17 still alive is Schmidt. And then they're dying off by the years go by, and so it's very probable come this proposed return date, they'll all be dead by that stage.
This is the decade of the deaths, same with the World War II veterans, basically, same generation. Within 10 years, there'll be none left. Yeah. Probably, very, very likely, but they won't be around. But I mean, maybe you're right, Jarrah. Maybe that will be a catalyst for revelation of some kind. We'll see. Hopefully, we can do another video then, Yeah. We've just been joined by another cast member in Neil's camera.
Yeah.
Hi, Monica.
She just handed me a note.
There's something I'd like to push up here.
Go ahead, Marcus.
If I can get my screen to share. Come on, let's go. Screen share. Start sharing. No, stop that. Why isn't it coming up with what I want? God. Here we go.
Yep. Here's at my end, Marcus. I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Right. It's the Owlist website. This is the first page. You come down to this article here. Apollo Ectochrome film subject to recycling in a vacuum. That's just been published, which talks about the work that is being done in Canada by Rob Williams, and it's written by me and Scott Henderson. So for anybody watching this program, have a look at this website, owlist.com, Owlist Online, and you'll see the report on the vacuum testing. It's
very important.
Yes, it's what's blown NASA apart, actually, because here are the pictures which show the control on the left and the same image taken with a film that has been taken out of the vacuum chamber. And notice how the color balance on the film is completely shot. The contrast levels are completely different. Here's another picture. It's the same image on a different roll of film. This is a normal roll of Kodak Ectochrome. This is Kodak Ectochrome after it has been subjected to 3 recyclings through a vacuum chamber.
And as Scott has pointed out, you put it in a vacuum chamber, but the vacuum it would have actually had to put up with on the moon would be even more extreme.
Exactly. The only level of vacuum that they could create here on Earth with the vacuum chamber they got, which cost several $100s, was the equivalent of being in low Earth orbit. Torr 10 to the -6.
And to clarify, the camera, the Hasselblad camera with which this Ectochrome film was put in, was not pressurized in any way.
It wasn't pressurized, nor the film cameras, the data acquisition cameras mounted in the Apollo command module, photographing outside through the pilot's window, that's the right-hand side, of all the activity on the moon. That's the Hexagon Spy satellite on display now, which used photographic film. This is the point. Stereo panoramic cameras. Those cameras had to be kept pressurized, and they were pressurized within this housing, 1 pound per square inch.
How long was the Ectochrome film actually kept inside this chamber that you had?
It was over a period, I think, of 3 days, which was trying to recreate what happened on Apollo 11. Apollo 17, where they had 3 EVAs. So what they wanted to recreate was the depressurization of the lunar module.
This is very incriminating because it essentially you have proved that this kind of film is damaged by exposure to a vacuum.
There was something I wanted to ask you about, Marcus.
Yeah.
Were there any tests, these vacuum tests, done on much shorter exposures to vacuum? Because, I'm not sure if obviously we had the Mercury flights, which had a film camera inside the cabin. That was obviously sealed. But on the Gemini flights, there was they had to depressurize the entire cabin for them to do spacewalks. You might remember the films of Edward White walking in space, floating around around outside in front of the Earth. And of course, those spacewalks, they were lucky to get half an hour or a few minutes back in those days. Did you do any tests with much shorter durations to see what effect that? I don't know if the Gemini cameras were pressurized or anything like that, but I think that would be something that would be worth exploring. We'll see how that compares.
Yeah, it's something. I think there are further tests going on. They're still doing the tests now, and it's certainly true to say that because we see photographs of Ed White with a camera, obviously in space. Well, we assume he's in space. We make that assumption. I don't recall seeing the pictures that he took with that camera. Now, it may well be that at that point they discovered that there were problems with photographic film. This is photographic film for anybody who's never seen a bit of photographic film. Photographic film is plastic backed, emulsion coated, light sensitive material. I think we've got a picture of it up here somewhere. No, we haven't. It's there somewhere. Photographic film. One of the techniques of filming, if you want to alter the characteristics of a film, you basically pinch it with your fingers, or finger and thumb. You put pressure onto the film, and that will affect the film. So a vacuum, certainly the vacuum on the moon, we're talking a vacuum on the moon of torr of 10 to the minus 11, which is a harder vacuum than can be created anywhere here on Earth. Even the Glenn Research Center in Ohio, which is what NASA used, and if you recall Brian Cox doing his dropping the ball and the feather at the same time, he was using the Glenn Research Center vacuum chamber to do it, to show that they both landed at the same time. Of course they would. There's no air in there, there's nothing to stop the feather falling down. But that can only pull a pressure of torr 10 to the minus 7, not the same as on the moon. But when you get this sort of image from something relatively light, a relatively low vacuum, this sort of distortion of the emulsion and the recording on the film, you've got to ask the question, how do they produce such beautiful studio quality images from the lunar surface?
Well, the answer is what you just said, studio quality.
I'm glad you picked up on that.
Andy, do you want to add anything to this? Because it was sort of like we've been going for a long time now, so I wondered if you wanted to say anything. You've been quite quiet.
Here's the film. Plastic backing, emulsion layers. So there we go. Okay, sorry.
No worries, Marcus. Thanks for that. That's very interesting. Exclusive new information here, ladies and gentlemen, on the allowlist.com website. Andy, you there?
I am, yeah. It was just, it's fascinating, really. I just wondered where Owlis actually got its name from. I don't know if Marcus knows.
It's a mythological, it's a Greek mythology name.
Meaning what?
I don't know. I've never asked. The next time I see David, I'll ask him.
Yeah, on the old website, they used to have like a Greek statue as an image, I remember, on the old website.
I remember it was the Easter Island head things.
Yeah.
They times, yeah.
Oh, there's a nice article here. The flat Earth proponent kills himself in rocket launch.
Yeah, that's my article. That's my article.
That's Jarrah's article.
He was.
Poor guy.
This is very sad. It's tragic that he wasted his life.
This is literally what it's come down to and stuff. This flat Earth nonsense has gone so far out of hand that people who are promoting this nonsense now have blood on their hands. In fact, I actually show how there's footage of his rocket taking off, but these are some examples how you can actually prove that the Earth is spherical. Like if you scroll up just a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Just enough to show the star chart.
Star chart.
I covered this on Third Rail Radio about this chap. He was determined to build a rocket so he could get high enough to see that there was no curvature. He was killed in an accident. He basically, the rocket failed, parachute failed, and he fell to Earth and died.
Did he report seeing the Earth curve?
He never got high enough.
No, he never got high enough.
He wanted to get up to 80,000 feet or something. He only got up to about 2,000, and that's when
2,000 feet.
Something like that, yeah. And then the rocket failed.
This here is a good example of why we know that the Earth is spherical. Like if you look at the image on the right is the constellations that you expect to see in the northern hemisphere. Flat earthers, they like obsessing about Polaris. We're living under a dome that's rotating above this flat disk. Well, okay, what about the southern hemisphere? You can see we have very different stars and constellations in the you can't see Polaris, for example. In fact, we don't even have an equivalent to Polaris. There's no the star that's closest to the south celestial pole is so dim that it's useless for celestial navigation. So we can actually sort of see it, the Crux constellation. I'm not sure if you can enlarge that, but you can actually see the Crux constellation and the two pointers. That's almost smack dead in the middle of the Milky Way. We use that to navigate in the southern hemisphere. In fact, this constellation, it's even mentioned in where it says Crux.
Yeah.
It's even mentioned in the second verse of the Australian national anthem. Beneath our radiant southern cross, we'll toil with hearts and hands. That's the second verse. That's the first line of the second verse.
It's like a lot of people say that. I should point out that people say, well, everyone used to think the Earth was flat until so many hundred years ago. But that's actually not true. Any sailor any sailor from like the Middle Ages and even before then could see that the Earth was round. The ancient Greeks knew that the Earth was round. It's not an old idea, the flat Earth thing. It's actually quite a new idea, because you don't have to go to space to see the Earth is round. I went to Skegness Beach, and you can actually see the offshore wind farm on a good day. It's a beautiful seaside resort, actually, northeast of England. And there's an offshore wind farm about 10 miles away. You can see the turbines, but you can't see the bottoms of them. You can only see the top bit that spin around.
In fact, if you actually go back to the article, I actually show an example of that as well. This example,
it's the curvature of the Earth hiding the bottom of these wind turbines.
Yeah, scroll. Yeah, the very next picture. Scroll down.
Yeah,
there we go. And this image, I kind of find that quite ironic, because this was actually taken from a flat earther, from a flat Earth video. There are a lot of these flat earthers, they're stupid enough to actually, photograph pictures of buildings or ships getting blocked by the Earth's curvature, and yet they do not seem to realize what their own footage is telling them. They rather than realize, okay, part of the building is blocked off, they just claim, oh, I shouldn't see any of the building to begin with. It should be blocked by all of the Earth's curvature. And then to try to justify it, they use that ridiculous 8 inches per mile squared nonsense, which is not how you measure the Earth's curvature. As I said before, any unit of length that's squared, that's a parabolic approximation. You might remember, y equals x squared from high school. What distance is y equals x squared going to curve to form a circle? It's not going to do that, because that's not for doing calculations with circles or spheres. In fact, if you actually go further down the page, I actually show the correct amount you should be using to predict how much, visible curvature, how far you can see further down, marked towards the bottom. I show the actual calculations you should be using, and you can cross-reference that with reality. Here we go. Here's a diagram showing a right-angle triangle. The hypotenuse is going to be the radius of the Earth plus the height of the observer. His line of sight to the horizon will be the opposite side of the triangle, and of course the adjacent side is going to be the radius of the Earth. And further, in fact, you can actually see this rate of curvature that I use here. We know that since Eratosthenes, the ancient Greeks you were talking about, he found that the curvature of the Earth was about 40,000 kilometers, the circumference of the Earth, and that's been refined, approximated to 40,075 kilometers. You do you divide that by 360 degrees, you find there's only about 111 kilometers per degree. Well, as I say in this article here, that tells you all you really need to know. Get out a circular protractor and see how curved 1 degree looks. But of course, you can use this to determine how much curvature should be visible. Like if you scroll further down,
it was an impressive job considering he was measuring shadows in Egypt. He got it quite accurately right. It's yeah. So
that's the 5 kilometer distance. You can see.
Yes, and as you can see, the amount of curvature you expect is negligible. It's 0.045 degrees. And I showed an example up there. You scroll back up to the one that had the flat surface with the buildings being blocked by the horizon. For all intents and purposes, the horizon looks flat, but we're not high enough to see that yet. You can see we're on the ground still. It looks flat, but you're not high enough to see a pronounced curve. You go up to the Empire State Building and you can see much further away, but the horizon still looks curved. You start going up in high altitude balloons or even aeroplanes, that's when the curvature starts to become more pronounced. If it gets higher and higher you go, the more pronounced it gets.
I must say that people have asked me sometimes, why I bothered, because I did my flat Earth debate on my show and things like that with Mark Sargent, and I've done a couple more since then. And people say, why do you even bother? Just don't even talk about it at all. Ignore them completely. But Jarrah, what you've done writing this article and what I've done, I think is necessary. This has reached a point where it does need to be rationally deconstructed. Just ignoring it, it's not going to go away if we ignore it. There's too many people who believe it and they haven't thought it through, and they need to think it through.
And they're misappropriating our stuff in the meantime, unless in many ways, it's a no-win situation. You ignore it, you let them, essentially you just let them, steal your stuff and try to misrepresent it to try to promote their nonsense. But if you bunk their crap, they say, oh, he's a NASA stooge, he's a traitor to the cause, he's this, he's that, he's a disinformation agent, all this nonsense. I probably copped the worst of it, I guess, because I'm probably the most vocal on the moon landing hoax.
Definitely. You know, the whole by writing these articles and like just deconstructing, like I said, you do. If there's anyone out there capable of rational thought, you are actually going to reach those people and hopefully pull them back from the edge. Because
let's just say that this new article here from Phil Coots, who's written several brilliant articles on moon base and how they couldn't build one. It's a very interesting article about the critical thinking behind Apollo, or what you should apply.
Right. This is on our list as well.
Yeah, this is on our list. It's only just been put up, so not everybody will have seen it. Anybody new to the Owlets website, you've got several days of reading to catch up with where we've got to.
Make the most of the lockdown.
Was this the original
binge read
that
Owlet?
was in Nexus magazine about 3 or 4 years ago, Mark?
That's right, yeah. First article from Phil Coots was in Nexus.
Oh, I remember the ones he did about the rockets, and so I'll be keen to read this. Yeah, binge
Marcus,
read.
I just have a quick thing I wanted to just mention this. I just looked this up here. If you get round to simulating the much shorter durations with the Gemini, I just looked this up here. The Gemini 4 spacewalk was only 20 minutes. On Gemini 12, Aldrin got about 2.5 hours outside on his EVA. He also had a standard EVA with just under an hour, 55 minutes. I think that would be a worthwhile thing investigating. I also found this one. I'm not sure if this is the same camera that they use and stuff. They had a few cameras actually. There was this one called the Pilot Observer camera. I'm actually looking at it right now. If I could screen share for a second. Yeah, that's all in terms. Share screen, start sharing. There we go. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the what they call the Gemini Pilot observation camera. I think that's what they called it. I just
haven't got it yet. Oh, here we are.
This was from a Collect Space forum. Here we go. The Pilot Observer camera, which they use to like film, reels of film inside the cabin. And I'm not sure if this camera was pressurized, but by the looks of it, it looks like a sealed box almost.
It would certainly be pressurized inside the cabin because he isn't wearing a visor.
Yes, you'd have an atmosphere inside the craft.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure if they're using pressurized cameras on the Gemini and stuff, but I think it would be something that you should investigate for cross-referencing just to make sure and everything when it comes to the Gemini. I know Spiel will probably cite that in response to these new discoveries with the film in the vacuum chamber.
Yeah.
On the subject of the lunar base, which Phil Coots writes about, I remember, people said, well, would the Apollo astronauts live long enough to see another moon landing? When the Apollo missions actually happened, there was absolutely no question of it. Some of them were saying, well, when they're going to go back, they'll probably be going back in a couple of years. And
we're talking about bases on Mars by 1982.
Well, if you read the science fiction, like I'm an Arthur C. Clarke fan, and if you read the science fiction of that era, they predict without a doubt that within a couple of decades there would be permanent bases on the moon. Regular space travel would become as routine as air travel. Expeditions to the outer planets, all these kinds of things. And I'm sure everyone was so excited that I'm sure if they could have seen forward in time to the year 2020, they would gasp in dismay. They would say, what? Yeah. You mean you got what? You haven't gone beyond low Earth orbit and it's 2020? Are you serious? I think it just goes to show that the way it was all portrayed back then, and the fact that they didn't talk about the radiation, they didn't talk about the rocketry problems and all the other situations. I think this, to me, is itself an indicator of the culture change.
You look at technology, how it progressed over the years and stuff. Like back in the 60s, the only way, having your own telecine, our kinescope to record your favorite TV shows. That was a luxury back in those days. Then Betamax comes along. Oh wow, this is amazing stuff. Then of course there was the format wars with VHS and everything like that. Now we got Blu-ray, we got streaming, we got everything. We got that's just one example of how technology has just gotten better and better over the years. Somehow with the space program, this is the one technology that seems to have gone backwards.
Oh, it's really So it's not even stayed the same. It has literally gone backwards, as Phil Coots has demonstrated. Now, with Neil, do you want to say anything? Because you're our producer, and we're coming to the end now.
Excuse me a second. I just have to call of nature. I'll be back in a bit.
Yeah, certainly.
Keep carrying on.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
Well, it's been very interesting discussion. I mean, I do have a 10-minute edited sequence of clips that I will probably show in our next Apollo Detectives when we'll be chatting with hopefully Scott and Randy, who has produced the excellent book Apollo Hoax Hidden in Plain Sight.
Yeah, I'll get Trevor back on then, hopefully, as well.
And then, I did message Trevor, who is also an author, Trevor Weaver, who we tried to get on tonight, but unfortunately we missed our call with him in some way. So we'll try and sort that out for next time and get him back in with us for the next one.
Neil, one thing, just when I think of it, when you speak to Randy, could you ask him if he could show on screen the film that he produced showing the volley beach ball player filmed here on Earth with the sand that he kicks up falling at the same speed that the beach volleyball player does, compared to the jump salute from Apollo 16,
right?
Where the sand falls much slower.
Okay, I will ask him.
The sand falls much faster. The astronaut comes down much faster. It's a very good illustration of how the whole thing was done here on Earth.
Okay, and I know that he's. I've communicated with him recently. He's uploaded a video of himself flying his plane, because he's been accused of not being a real pilot.
He's a real pilot.
Yeah, someone filmed him, and actually they also uploaded the unedited version because the accusations went further, because they said, oh no, he could be a student pilot and the actual real pilot is the guy that's filming it, which was a bit of a silly thing, because you're letting your student be in full control of a plane whilst you're in charge of a video camera, which is not the done thing as an aviation person, I suspect. So they decided to put the unedited version, 20 minutes or wherever it was, up, that shows the whole thing of him being the actual pilot. So this is Randy, who will be discussing this in our next show.
Let's say Phil Platt has got some more explaining to do.
Yes.
if Phil Platt is one of Randy's protagonists, because now Randy has issued a challenge to debate online in public with him. All his trolls have been asked to debate with him, and not one of them has accepted.
I traveled all the way to Las Vegas back in 2010, to track this plate guy down. He was actually appearing at one of James Randi's conventions. I think it was, what was it called? The Amazing Meeting 10. TAM, that's called, yes, TAM 8, I think it was. Anyways, I called out, what's his name? Adam Savage during the Q&A session.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That was good.
And he was like, entertainment, not science, which it flies in the face of what they were trying. They're going around saying, "Oh, it's busted this." I said, "Hey, you filmed you never slowed down the wire rig footage, and if you do that, you find it matches up nicely with your with the original Apollo 16 footage." And he was like, "Oh, I never thought of that." What we do is in science, we're an entertainment show, and our job is to demonstrate the this and that, the scientific. I can forget exact words and stuff, but basically the gist of it was that we're an entertainment show, essentially. And Phil Plait, he was originally going to supposedly going to give me an interview with the I had to track down one of the representatives and stuff. It was a guy by the name of Austin Cooten. He was able to arrange a 15-minute interview between me and Plait, and he backed out after I called Savage out on his nonsense.
Oh, yeah. This was
the simple question I had for him was basically, Plait, I can openly say this. I know why I'm saying this. He is a pathological liar, because he has often gone around claiming that Casing denied any space travel was possible. That's a complete lie, because in the actual interview that he cites, that Plait cites, Casing specifically says that, possibly our surveyor did land on the moon. I believe that certain unmanned missions might have made it to the moon. The Russians were supposed to have done that. The surveyor was supposed to have done that. And the only thing he makes clear is that he doesn't believe that man went to the moon and stuff, but he conceives that unmanned missions to space are possible. Yeah. Unmanned missions to the moon are possible. He even cites some of the space missions in his book. He cites the things like the biosatellite, things like the various Tetra satellites that that they had, for training astronauts and stuff. This is all in his book. He clearly knows that space travel is real.
They have to lie. They lie about us, though, don't they? I mean, they lie.
Phil Blake puts words in his mouth by claiming that Casey denied any space travel was possible. He's made that claim at least 3 times. In fact, when I posted my Moonfaker series, the first episode, he actually went into the comments, and I asked him, "Why don't you talk about Operation Dirty Trick?" Which was that plan to use. You might remember the Operation Northwoods thing, where they're planning on invading Cuba, using false flag attacks. One of the false flags they were considering was if the Mercury capsule exploded and John Glenn was killed, they would blame his death on Cuba, use it as an excuse to invade Cuba. And so
it's obvious, like that. Phil Plait has lied. Like, they often lie about us. They know they're in the wrong and they don't like it, and they're using dirty tricks when they're not going quiet, which is what they are.
And the dirty trick I'm referring to was the.
Isn't it interesting? None of them show their faces. Yeah. We're showing our faces. You've got our real names. None of them show their faces. None of them give their real names.
Andrew,
that's cowardice of the worst sort.
I know. It's always the way. Andy, do you want to add anything, Andy?
Can I just finish what I was going to say?
I've just been sitting
here.
I
hadn't finished what I was going to say.
Okay, Jarrah, go ahead.
At the same time.
Go ahead.
Finished. But yeah, this Operation Dirty Trick thing was a proposed false flag attack, which was essentially going to capitalize on the deaths of astronauts. And yet Phil Plait, he often went around saying that the idea that NASA would murder the Apollo 1 crew was a, quote, loathsome accusation. Well, I often called him out and I said, why don't you call it Operation Dirty Trick? It's like a kryptonite.
Yeah. It's fine.
Definitely.
Well done, sir.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion once again on Apollo Detectives. It really, really has. The theme, if there is a theme for this entire program, is I think we're making progress. It seems that the vocal period, which probably lasted from the late 90s to sort of a couple of years ago, seems to be coming to an end. The propaganda they put out for the 50th anniversary hasn't worked. And I think we are, I would say, there's a cautious, optimistic theme for this particular program, that we have won the rational argument. All we have to do now is basically win the hearts and minds of the people who hear us. And you know what? The truth has a nasty habit. I think it's a good habit of doing so. The lie can only be maintained for a short time, indefinitely. You can't fool all the people all the time, as Marcus has said himself. I'd like to say a big thank you to all the panel. I'm sorry we couldn't get Trevor on for this particular episode, but Marcus Allen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate that.
Next, especially Jarrah White, thank you for your videos and everything you've done as well, and for challenging these people directly. Thanks very much, mate. And our production team, brilliant production team. We have Andrew Chaplin.
Cheers, Ben.
You're welcome, mate, and thanks for being on. He runs a show called Paranormal Peep Show, along with his co-host and our producer, Neil Geddes-Ward. Thank you very much, Neil, as well, for being here and for producing another episode. I know how hard it's hard work for you, I know. So
it's worth it.
It definitely is worth it. I enjoy putting it together afterwards, and I always look forward to recording the next one. So, yeah.
Nothing else to do during this
absolutely. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I recommend, if you're in lockdown, you could watch all the previous Apollo Detectives episodes. They're all on YouTube on several different channels to watch. You can binge watch those. You can binge read the Owless website, or go through all the old Nexus magazines, or go to the Moonfaker channel, which is Jarrah White's, or the Paranormal Peep Show, or indeed the Herpanmo Show on Herpanmo Radio, Herpanmo TV, and all the things that I produce. Yep, I am Ben Emlyn-Jones. And it's been a great honor to once again host this amazing discussion between these amazing individuals. There's going to be more. Don't go away. We haven't finished yet. Stay tuned.
I would like to say one last thing before we go. While you're in lockdown, I've got some reading material for you. There's this new book that just came out. This is a fiction book. It's called Shields Down. I don't normally promote fiction books on these kinds of interviews, but this one is kind of special, in which I actually was consulted during its writing, and its author, William DeBerg, he actually based one of the characters off me.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yes. This basically is a science fiction book in which I'll actually read the back of it to you. It says SGR-02 45 plus 05, a dangerous magna star within close galactic proximity, shows signs of erupting just as the Earth is in a magnetic reversal and losing its magnetic shield. Professor James Templeton, a brilliant but maligned astrophysicist who alone predicted, is summoned to Washington, D.C., and basically what happens is the Earth's magnetic field is shut down and basically is vulnerable to this radiation from this explosion here, and everyone has to live underground in tunnels. Right. And he based a character off me. In fact, there's a few chapters about this. A character by the name of John, what's his name? John Bazzani, who is a astrophysicist who openly says that the moon missions were faked.
Oh, wow.
Well, if you're dealing with the subject of space radiation, I mean, that's a perfect... Oh, right.
He actually got a little dedication to me as well. It says to Jarrah White. This is a Vox. What's this? Is Vox Calamitis in Deserto. I think I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but I've got the translation of it here. One of these tabs. Here we go. Here we go. It translates to the voice of one crying out in the desert.
Now about that. Yep, well, I'll tell you what, that's certainly on my list. I've got other things to read, but I mean, that sounds very interesting. And the subject of space radiation, of course, you'd be the perfect consultant, and indeed, the subjects of the moon missions will inevitably come up when it comes to the subject of radiation space. Just one bit of commercial.
Yes.
And look at the lead title.
Oh, wow.
Biowarfare, a timely overview, followed by COVID-19, passenger for another pathogen.
That is very topical indeed.
Then we have got QAnon revealed.
Excellent. I'll look forward to that. I mean, I've just renewed my subscription, so I'll look forward to that.
Make sure you get it as well, Jarrah. It'll be out in Australia.
I'll keep an eye out for us.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I actually saw a YouTube video just recently. A friend of mine sent me a link to an article that had actually come out in, I think it was January of last year, fearing that there was going to be some major coronavirus outbreak from China. And it seemed to be a major prediction. They don't specifically refer to the virus in question, but they actually refer to the umbrella that particular virus responsible is belongs to. It was the coronavirus. I think it was called right now SARS-CoV-2 is what it is.
Yeah.
That was the SARS-CoV-1 was responsible for that SARS outbreak back in 2003. And they're actually part of this umbrella group. I forget what it's called right now and stuff. You can understand coronavirus isn't a single species of virus. It's a whole collection of viruses, a whole different range of species of it.
Talking of that, there's just one thing which you might like to check out. If you look at all the figures that are produced by I'm sure in Australia as well as in the UK, we're told every day, number of people infected, number of people dying. Where are those figures coming from?
Are they actually doing viral screenings on these people, or is it just like symptom checks?
I'll chime in on this. So, Ben, you were diagnosed over the phone, weren't you?
Yes.
So you didn't go in and you didn't have a chemical test, medical test?
Like hardly anyone. I've not been virally screened. It's technically possible. I think it's unlikely, but it's possible I simply had some other disease.
So here's the thing. Do you remember when swine flu came out?
Yes, 2009.
And do you remember when people had to phone 111 to see if they got swine flu?
Yeah.
And do you remember the symptoms were runny nose, cough, difficulty breathing, and basically cold-like symptoms?
It's basically like normal flu, just slightly worse.
So basically, loads of people phoning up 111, giving their symptoms, and they were being marked as a stat. Yep, you've got swine flu.
Yeah. So this is what he did to me. Yeah.
So exactly. So how do we not know that some of these figures are people phoning up and saying, I've got these symptoms, which could just be a regular cold or regular flu, and they're just marking it down as COVID-19?
They are marking it down as COVID. This is why you get some people who have it twice. Some people have it, get over it, and have it again. Yeah. But actually, either both or one of those occasions, they're not getting the coronavirus at all. Yeah. Because if you can't get it twice, so there's something. So exactly these statistics that the media has come up with are not based on any actual scientific survey.
But they're coming from a specific source, and that source is the Johns Hopkins University dashboard. Oh. That was a prime sponsor of Event 201.
I bet it's Dr. Ali S. Khan is involved in it because he's head of the CDC's pandemic preparation.
There's some very interesting connections. Event 201, held in October 2019, was sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, World Economic Forum. And it was all financed by the Open Philanthropy Society. And guess who that is?
George Soros?
You're right.
How do I know that name was going to appear? Well, you missed Bill Gates, and I thought Bill and Melinda Gates, George Soros. These names keep coming up again and again.
All the figures.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but I would like to mention this now that we're on the subject of this. As a matter of fact, that same traitor I mentioned earlier, Albino Dellapini, recently he actually published an article alleging that that space and viruses are hoax. And you know why he claimed that? He said, "Oh, because you do a search on viruses, the only thing that comes up are CGI pictures. We have electron microscopes. Why don't we see the electron microscope pictures of the viruses?" Well, here's a tip. Do a more specific search. Type in virus or electron microscope. You'll find hundreds of pictures. In fact, there was actually a news report this last night about them trying to use the massive synchrotron they have here in Australia to try to image the viruses with incredible more accuracy than we have with electron microscopes. There's many ways of imaging
those figures from the Johns Hopkins University website, which you can go on, you can then collate them to what the British government are saying about the figures in the UK. My question is, where do the Johns Hopkins University researchers get their figures from? Who reports them? Is it the Department of Health? Is it the NHS? Because they are showing figures for 185 countries around the world, including Libya. Who in Libya has got the time to report to Johns Hopkins University that they've got 2 cases?
These are probably just estimates, and they're presenting them as actual data.
Yes, but yes, they are. But what is dangerous about that is the government policy is based on it.
Yeah. That's exactly. The decision whether to go into lockdown or not is based on Italy made that decision based on these kinds of figures.
Yeah, and they're coming from the Johns Hopkins University. Let's see if we can find it. Just search for Johns Hopkins University, and you'll come up with that particular set of figures.
Marcus, do you think that what QAnon is saying will happen in terms of Trump going for the bad guys?
Well, it's already started. He's folding the Federal Reserve into the U.S. Treasury.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, exactly. And then, next step, return to the gold standard.
He's not the first U.S. president to try and do that. 2 others did. John F. Kennedy, Kennedy and Lincoln. I mean, he must have some people. I'm not saying, I think someone must be looking after him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be alive now.
There have been 12 attempts on his life already.
Oh, man, pray for him, man.
Which is why
can't take care of President Trump.
That is why Air Force One is such an important aspect. It has got all the necessary anti-warfare devices on board. Nobody knows what they are because you don't need to know. But there have been 12 missile attempts on his life when he's been flying in Air Force One. Yes, there are people out to get him, but he is surrounded by the Marines who are loyal to the president. They're part of the U.S. military, but they are answerable to the president.
The fact that he's still alive. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's a good sign. But well, I mean, that'll be fantastic. I mean, I'll have to wait and see what happens. I'm getting tired, guys. I have to go to bed.
12 Days of Darkness. It starts in 10 minutes.
Oh, right. So right, we finished just in time. Good.
Yeah, we have. So let's wish everybody a successful 10 Days of Darkness.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to have to go to bed, guys. That book, I remember that, Jarrah. Yeah, I remember the book. And next.
Look at that.
I'll show you. Let's all do it. Here we go. Neil, you've got a new one. There's mine. Was one of mine.
Oh, yeah, Roswell Rising. Good book, that. Recommend.
My book is still being written, so I can't show it.
Marcus.
And I found some time to write some books myself.
Next time we talk, I want to go back in history a little bit to discuss some interesting information in a book published well over 20 years ago called For All Mankind.
Well, that's something we'll do on the next, because we've got so much more we can go into in future shows. I mean, I think this is the subject that it doesn't seem, we don't seem to be running out of new material, do we?
Oh, no.
I was actually going to talk about For All Mankind, not the book you're talking about, but the TV show that just came out on Apple TV.
I'll be interested to hear about that.
Yeah.
Because For All Mankind is an interesting book, specifically one character in the book, Julian Scheer.
Okay.
Probably haven't heard of him, but he was a PR man for NASA.
All right.
And he made some interesting comments. We'll save them for next time. But it confirms what we've been talking about today.
Excellent.
All right, good. Neil, have you downloaded the video? Because like the last video, I've got a copy of it anyway. But
well, once I've stopped this one, I'll be able to download it.
Yeah, there's two videos.
I'll be able to download it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to go now, guys. But thanks very much.
Cool. Yeah, take care, guys.
Thank you very much indeed for everyone watching the Apollo Detectives. We appreciate your time for listening. Stay tuned for another one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night. Take care. Have a good day, Jarrah.
Take care.
Good night.
And good morning, Jarrah.